are you here?
These are what we ratified last week.
Oh,
And we just
okay.
didn't go in the office and, because we're probably gonna have that again next week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me get set up.
Protest my project. I'm gonna move your chair out in the hall.
I am as soon as you move.
Are you good, Renan?
Possession is 9/10 of the law.
That's why I'm gonna
Yeah.
wait for him to move.
All right, welcome to our city council meeting for tonight, July.
Yes, that is,
Goodness.
I know it's hard
I
to,
told him not to talk.
he's a doctor, right?
Right.
You do have a gavel.
So welcome tonight, July 15th, 2020. We will begin with an invocation by Pastor Carol from Calvary Chapel, and then we will have the Pledge of Allegiance led by our city manager.
Let's pray. Lord, we are definitely living in times that one would call uncertain, but nothing catches you by surprise. We take hope in the scriptures, and the psalmist declares that in times like these, we can cry out to God Most High, to God who performs all things for me. And Lord, during these times, may we find as a city that we are thankful. May we find as citizens that we are unified and that we are creative as we go through this pandemic, as we go through this summer, as we go into the school year, Lord. Therefore, we present the needs that we know our community has. They're very apparent, and we ask, Lord, that you would bless us with your strength, your wisdom, and your provisions. I think of law enforcement, Lord, and the nasty headlines that are all around our nation. But locally, Lord, I'm thankful that our law enforcement is the best. They protect us, Lord. They help. They serve. And they want to do and serve our community to the very best of their calling, to the very best of their profession, and to the very best, Lord, that they can meet each and every need in our growing community. Would you help them? Would you protect them? And would they be encouraged, Lord, by our community for the great work that they do? Lord, our educators are going to be double tasked as the school year will open up with new students, with in school and with online. Help them, Lord. It's an exhaustive work, let alone to watch kids, then to educate them and to use different venues. But we know we have great educators. We have wise men and wise women that are leading our schools. May you be the one that gives them that inspiration, that encourages them whenever they are discouraged. And lastly, Lord, we pray for our locally owned business. They are the DNA of who we are as a city. We love, Lord, the restaurants. We love the shops and stores. May they not just survive, but may they thrive. And may we be reminded how well and how we ought to support them. We ask this, Lord, in your name, and bless this meeting as well. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will now move on to our agenda order approval. Are there any items that the council would like changed from the published agenda? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll go to council business.
Mayor, I would first of all like to thank Reverend Carroll for that very inspiring and important prayer tonight before the meeting. So thank you very much. We do indeed live in a great community, and sometimes we deal with issues and we forget how wonderful of a place we live in and the people that surround us. So thank you for that message to get us started tonight. Secondly, I would like to revisit something that I brought up, I don't know, last week or the week before, I forget. They kind of all meld together a little bit. And that's about our fireworks. And with all the fires that have been going on around us and the evacuation that we had last night over in Hamblin Valley area in Iron County, I just really want to urge our citizens and everyone to be mindful with the 24th of July coming up, to be extra careful and to use our designated areas that we have established within our city and not go beyond those areas. And I would go far as to say that I think that we should be punishing those folks that start fires and charging them for the cost to our labor and our fire department. And it's critical. And I realize that we can't ban the fireworks because of state laws, but we've got to be more careful.
Mike Phillips with the fire department. So the people that we can track down who started the fire, we do go back and bill them. For instance, the fire that was on Fairway Drive, we know who started that fire, and we're putting that bill together. Chief Schertz was working on it earlier. I don't know if he got a number. How much?
You can come up now too and say your name.
Yeah, and this is not, I mean, I certainly don't want to, I want people to celebrate but we have a mechanism in place, and so we need to follow that.
Mike Schertz with the fire department. Yeah, so Chief Phillips asked me just to put together, so we have a mechanism in place to recover costs, if we can find out who to
Right.
recover those costs from. So I put together just an estimate for, and remember, this is just those initial suppression costs. It doesn't factor in any property damage or anything of that nature. So if we use the MOU rates that the state pays for fire equipment, so that's a standard rate. That little fire we had on Fairway Drive, which was just over an acre, about an acre and a half, I think, there would have been about $6,200 in suppression costs just on that small fire. So, and I was supposed to give that to him before he walked up. Then I wouldn't have had to come up here. Yeah.
So thank you. I want to support your efforts, and I want people to be able to celebrate in a meaningful manner, but we have established guidelines, and people need to follow them.
So we'd like to echo your statement of having them shoot them at those designated areas. There are safe areas that we've set aside for those. Also, in our community, when we did the Wildland Urban Interface Zone, that area is banned for fireworks. So there's really not much development there right now, but as that gets developed, they're banned in that area at any time.
Will that be communicated as that development happens to those families and homeowners there?
Yes, so as they start to develop those areas, we'll put up, we put our rules up, we give those to the fireworks stands, so they're posted, the designated areas.
Okay.
We'll put up a map that shows the areas that they can't shoot in when we start building in those areas.
Great.
Chief, remind us of the designated places, please.
So there's the Bicentennial Ball Field, the Recreation Center on the hill. You've got the south parking lot of Cedar High, the south parking lot of Canyon View High School, and then Iron Springs Elementary.
And would you also, because I know there was some chatter on social media about the mess that was left on July 4th, and how would you prefer that be handled by the citizens?
So Paul had me look into some costs of dumpsters to do it for this, just for the 24th holiday would be $350.
So we already put out about a dozen to 15 of those 50-gallon drums, the
Right.
steel ones. They get filled up really quick. Mike worked with some waste haulers to get a small dumpster. We'll get 5 of them. We'll put them around, put a sign that says "Put fireworks here." The other thing that the city does is Hunter sends a fella out in the street sweeper. It takes him about a day and a half to do all
Makes a
5
big
lots.
mess.
So it does put a little bit of strain on staff. What we'd like to do with the dumpsters this year is try them out and see if they work. If they work, it'll be $700 next year, and we can figure that out and move that along.
Yeah, we don't want people taking them home or putting them in their own vehicles or
a
things of that
budget.
nature, correct?
Yeah, last year we had a gentleman with a brand new Chevy Duramax hauled his fireworks home. A couple hours later, his home was on fire, plus the whole neighborhood was burning down because he hauled them back home. And we've had them put them in their trash cans and haul them in their garage, like their garage on fire. So really like to leave them outside, leave them on the street. If you have a
Common
bucket of
sense.
water, bring water with you and pour it on them. Or do them in January when it's safe.
Can we make sure,
Consistent message.
can we make sure, Chief, that this is out on the city's Facebook page and social media, that we get this put out?
So Mike sent you a link to a Fox 13 interview with the deputy fire marshal.
Watched it.
It's really good. He's a good interview. I did too. We posted that So folks, I mean, it's a little longer, but it's the same message. If you're gonna do it, be safe, and here's some ways to be safe. We've posted that on our social media accounts.
Thank you.
And then while we've got this issue up, would there be any deterrent effect if we were to have some kind of ordinance where it's a secondary offense if you start a fire and you were lighting them within a certain distance of undeveloped brush area, that, you know, there's an extra fine or something, just to, as another way to illustrate, look, do not start these next to big empty brush areas?
That's a question for Tyler.
Well, so we already have criminal law that's written by the state that allows us to charge criminally if they are reckless or intentionally cause the burning. If the council wanted some sort of additional law on the books that required a city fine as well, that's something we could look at.
Yeah, I don't love criminal ordinances, but, you know, something that's more like a, you know, city fine or something that, that went out with the notices every year, just to once again illustrate that we do not, these should not be set off right next to big, dry, grassy areas. I don't know, I'd be open for that discussion if you guys think it would help. If it wouldn't help, then we don't need to, but.
And I think this year was an anomaly. We've had 4th of Julys where we haven't had any fires. There was a lot of fireworks out there this year.
A lot.
A lot,
People are bored at home.
I guess. They didn't go on vacation. You know,
Yeah.
they didn't go to Lake Powell and spend their money, so they bought fireworks with it. And
Well, some people went to Lake Powell.
Cheap vacation.
Thank you.
thank you.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, are there any other council comments? No?
I just had one request. I don't know if there is, I talked a little bit to Tyler about it, but if there's a mechanism for, before our packets go out, if we can have readable maps in there. And I don't know, this probably can apply to a lot of the people in the audience as they're sending their stuff in for the packets and whatnot. If we have a digital map, not a photocopy, because we can't read the notes, we can't read the streets to try and figure out where they are and what you're doing. And I don't know if there's a gatekeeper at some point, if that can be Dawn, or if
Figure
that's
something out.
Tyler or what,
It
but
might
please.
not be in our next round of meetings, but we'll figure something out.
Okay, thank you so much.
So, yeah, and I've kind of taken that on since the Zoom meetings started. And I'm fine continuing to do that, but just sometimes I'm throwing the packet together on a Friday and I give you the best I got, and Dawn always gets them to me. They just come a little late sometimes. So
Okay, thank
I'll
you,
start working on that a little earlier.
appreciate it.
Yeah, we try and really study these and figure out what's going on, but we can't read a lot of the notes, and we don't know sometimes the orientation of the map, so that I echo Councilman Hartley's concerns.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hartley.
All right.
He knows it's coming.
Is there anything else? Okay, then we'll move on to our Arbor Day proclamation. Whereas the legislature of the state has adopted an act designating Arbor Day, and by that act has designated the last Friday in April as Arbor Day, and whereas it is the purpose of the designation of this day throughout the nation to encourage planting of shade and forest trees, to encourage the harvesting of our forest crops by approved conservation methods, and to encourage the protection of our forests from devastating fires, insects, disease that destroy the beauty and usefulness of our woodlands, as well as their wildlife. And whereas through the cooperation of all residents of Cedar City, Utah, the beneficial effect of forestry planting, proper conservation practices in harvesting timber, and the protection from natural enemies of the forest can be materially increased as we pass on enduring heritage of vital natural resources to succeeding generations. Therefore, I, Miley L. Wilson Edwards, Mayor of Cedar City, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, July 7th, 2020, as a day we observed Arbor Day in Cedar City, Utah. And this kind of coincides with our big tree planting and everything else. We just didn't have the proclamation to read to you last week. So, but this is part of the Tree City USA program, which we've been a part of for over 20 years now. So that explains why that is on there. Okay, we will now move to staff comments. None. Okay, then we'll move to the public agenda with the public comment portion. Yes.
My name is Laura Henderson, and I am a resident of Cedar City, and my home is on Dewey Avenue. And I have a statement that I'd like to read. I would like to state for the public record, in and of Cedar City, Utah, in Iron County, Utah, in tonight's city council meeting, that on or about July 8th, 2020, the owner of 351 Dewey Avenue did construct and erect on the south side yard of his property facing Dewey Avenue a large hand on a post with a middle finger extended upward. Further, on or about July 13th, 2020, the owner of 351 Dewey Avenue added a spotlight to the same sign so as to light it up throughout the night. This hand with the middle finger extended upward is visible to pedestrian traffic, including but not limited to families and children, as well as vehicular traffic. I have contacted several city officials as well as council people about this hand with the middle finger extended upward, and it remains in its original place. I would like to invite all residents of Cedar City to contact Cedar City officials and council people to voice their opinions and concerns about the impact of this middle finger in their community. I would also like to make aware to the public that there is an ordinance in Cedar City, Chapter 26, Article 16, 4, number 14, about obscene signs. It says signs that exhibit words or pictures of an obscene nature. This falls under the prohibited sign ordinance. And further, under Section 25.3 of the nuisance definition, any activity that meets any one or more of the 5 definitions set forth shall constitute a nuisance if it occurs within Cedar City. And under number 3, a nuisance as defined in UCA 7610-803, which is also Utah Criminal Code, unlawfully doing any act or omitting to perform any duty, which act or omission, and under A it says annoys, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health of, or safety of 3 or more persons, and under B offends public decency. So also in Cedar City, in order to stand in front of this body tonight, we have Cedar City Rules of Order and Procedure, and under Chapter 4, it talks about basic civility. So in order for me to stand in front of you, I can't be profane, and I am obligated to, it says, in order to protect the public's ability to participate and to protect the orderly conduct of the public's business and the following behavior during a public meeting is not allowed. And number 8, general conduct that is disorderly, rude, profane, or that disrupts the orderly conduct of the public's business. So I would just like the public to be aware of these different ordinances and rules, not only with the city, but within the state of Utah. And I feel like, you know, the citizens deserve something to count on. And ordinances and laws are something that are put in place to count on. And if they're not going to be enforced, what is the public going to count on? Thank you.
So maybe just so I can address this with the public. So in speaking with Mr. Jackson, we had a look at this, for lack of a better word, sign, post, whatever you want to call it, on the side of this individual's.
It's a middle finger. It's a hand with a middle finger.
It's located on personal property. There is not anything in our sign ordinance that restricts someone from putting a post with an ornament on top of it. Whether it's a middle finger or not, I'll leave that to the maker of it. So we did look at that. The other thing that comes into play here is the First Amendment, right of protection of speech. So although I think probably the majority of people would find the middle finger to be rude and inappropriate, the First Amendment protects rude and inappropriate speech.
My neighbors find it offensive.
And
So that's what's in the ordinance, offensive, prohibited
so
signage.
so it's legal for it to be there. My legal advice to the city is not to remove it. You'd be violating this individual's First Amendment constitutional rights.
So it's better to offend a whole neighborhood's rights.
Protect his speech, yes.
Okay, well, I'm not in agreement with that, neither my neighbors, but thank you.
All right, are there any other public comments? No? Okay, then we will get on with our business agenda with our public portion with item number 1, consider approving the final plat for Talon Point at South Mountain Subdivision Phase 4 at 2925 West Eagle Drive.
Good evening, Tim Watson with Watson Engineering. We are here for the approval of Phase 4 of Talon Point subdivision at South Mountain. This is the last phase of a development by Diversified Properties that'll finish out the property that they own.
This was one of the maps in question. It was difficult to know exactly where this was. I knew it was an Eagle Ridge, and I drove out there, but there was no cross streets and stuff, so it would be helpful if we had a little more understanding on that. But
Fail, Tim, fail.
no, I'm just
No.
I'm just
Do we
saying.
want to address this again? I think we addressed it not too long ago.
I'm just saying it just would make it easier for us.
And I fully support you in that. If I need to email you directly the same information that is emailed into staff at that time, we were more than happy to. Just let us know. And maybe that's what I need to do ahead of time.
Well, I don't want to be specific to me. I'm just saying
No, we'll do it to the
we're
entire
trying to
council, that's
respond to a request, and we want to be informed about it. So we just need to know all the details. And so if the lack of understanding is on our part, on the cities, then that's something we need to correct.
Most everything that we submit to the city is electronic. So, and it's hard many times, especially if your packets are paper, to get the correct size because those are large sheets of paper.
Right.
Even at 11 by 17 or a ledger size, they will be difficult to read.
Well,
So-
and maybe it's a narrative sometimes where we say this is located just off of
Okay.
Talon Drive, and
So I put,
The address is always on
yeah,
there.
the address is always in the memo, and I always put it on the agenda. But I,
yeah, but we don't know where Hawk Drive is and Eagle Drive.
There is a location map on the map. Do you know how to read that?
Well,
I'm just asking.
maybe I don't. Maybe I don't.
Staff will switch up how we communicate some of that stuff, and we'll try to get some better programs so you can read those better.
Okay.
The one thing that I couldn't see is where is Phase 4?
Where-
Which part of it is Phase 4?
Which part? Let's see. So Google Earth is a little outdated here. This is Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 3 is right here. Phase 4 is just going to come up here and kind of connect, generally speaking, this area right
Okay.
there.
Does it doesn't go over the ridge, does it?
No, sir.
Yeah.
No, this is a different landowner just to the north of this.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, it finishes off, actually, if I can be even more precise, Phase 4 connects this road here with this road here with another little loop. That's what Phase 4
Yeah.
is.
Great.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, are there any other questions for Tim?
Okay, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank
All right,
you.
we good with this going on consent?
Yes.
Okay. Item number 2, consider an ordinance amending the final plat of the Cliffs at Sunrise subdivision. Yes.
Okay, these two
You
items.
still didn't say your name.
Ron Larson with Levitt Land and Three Peaks Engineering.
Thanks, Ron.
And we were modifying the Cliffs and Blackstone Phase 3, which was right here. So what we did, we're amending it to for the Cliff subdivision, we removed 3 lots that were right here along this road. We removed those from this subdivision, and then we added that property into the PUD, which was Blackstone Phase 3, which is now going to call it Crestline. So this one and the next one after this, there's no change in, the overall property is all the same. It's just we moved some lots out of one and into the other.
It still fits the number that's in the approved RDO.
Yeah, the approved number for that phase is 351 or something, and we're at 170 something, so
Okay,
we're way
thank you.
under.
Ron, why the switch?
Well, a couple of reasons. The 3 lots that were right there were really big lots, and they were just single family, and they decided that they would do better to put in these smaller homes and make it part of the PUD so that all of the property is taken care of and landscaped, and so.
And so the 3 lots that are being switched over to the 7 within the PUD,
Right,
what happens to those 3 lots?
they just go away.
They just go
And then
away.
So the other one
It's more
takes it
green
over.
space and trees and green space.
There will be some, but not,
Was just asking
as
the
much.
question.
No, there will be 7 houses sitting where that was.
7 houses to replace the 3.
Yeah. 7 houses.
But there's much smaller houses.
Right.
Not as tall.
Yeah.
Well, I know that was a
They're also
concern that came out of the
single-story.
planning commission meeting.
One of the things that, those 3, we didn't really have a way to enforce because the zoning and that allows them to be 2-story,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to keep everything single-story right along that area. So that was another reason for doing it.
For those folks that live in the Crescent Heights.
By doing that, we were also able to lower the grades of there was an area right here where we came in and turned, and the backyards were close to the 6 foot. We were having a hard time getting 6 feet of clearance, and by adding in the other road down there, we were able to lower those by about 1.5 feet. So we were able to get the 6 feet all the way along there.
Oh, that's good.
So
That's good.
it worked better that way.
All right, are there additional comments, questions? At this point, this will have to go on the action agenda, obviously. No? Okay, we'll put this on the action agenda. Consider an ordinance amending the final plat of Blackstone Phase 3 PUD.
So this is what takes the place of, so this right here is about where the other ended. So these lots are the same. The difference is now this road comes out the bottom, and those are now single slab-on-grade homes. There was
So where
no
would the-
changes to Portal Hill Road, there's no changes, I mean, Portal Hill Road basically is completely the same number of sewer and water laterals and everything, so
You kind of show me where the 7 new places would be then?
basically these right here.
Okay.
So before it came in, and then it kind of turned, and there was 2 or 3 that were kind of around this spot, and those have been straightened out, and then we've added those right there. And before we had this spot down here that was being deeded to the homeowners association, and now it's part of the homeowners, it'll be part of the plat. So it kind of clarifies that too.
So there is still a Blackstone PUD
The Blackstone Phase 1 is the townhomes.
down in there, okay.
What they decided was they didn't want to continue with Blackstone. They wanted a different name since they're different types of units. That's why they
Okay.
wanted to change it to Crestline.
Okay, yeah, my only objection is in having Blackstone and Black Rock in the same town. I empathize with our pizza delivery drivers that are gonna get mixed up, but that's,
Yes.
So we've got Crescent Hills, we have Crescent Heights,
I
we have
know.
Crestline.
But we also have Google Maps.
Got to teach me.
good drivers don't need Google Maps, though.
Okay, but for the rest of us, we have Google Maps. All right, are there any other comments, questions related to this? This will go on the action agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item number 4, public hearing to consider general land use amendment from low density to medium density for property located at 2200 South Eagle Ridge Drive.
Good evening, Dallas Buckner, Go Civil Engineering. So this is the Canyon subdivision. We brought the vicinity plan through and council requested that we do the zone change. So we're zone changing what is phase 2 and phase 3. But the general plan is for low density. It's currently zoned R22, and so items 4 and 5 go together, but this is the general plan amendment to medium density, and then next is the zone change from R22, which allows duplexes, to R21, which is single family.
Each of these two items, well, in fact, the next 4 items are reducing the density. I like the direction.
Yeah.
I just had one question in your phase 1 on the canyons. Are they not wanting to protect that one from duplex or higher density where it's R2-2?
I think that there's only 2 that Alex still owns,
Okay,
so.
so it
that
should be
aren't-
okay.
Yeah, so.
All right, that's what we
We're
wondered
just-
if
we
they
wanna
were
make sure we
gonna
protect
be
that
built
neighborhood.
out.
Yeah,
Because it's turning out to be a nice development. We want to make sure it stays that
Yeah,
way.
Yeah.
it is. It's very nice. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that back through.
All right, are there additional comments, questions related to this? If not, we'll open the public hearing. And we will close the public hearing, and we'll move this on to the action agenda. Item number 5, public hearing to consider amending the zone from dwelling 2 unit R-2-2 to dwelling single unit R-2-1 for property located at 2200 South Eagle Ridge Drive.
Dallas Buckner, Go Civil. This is the zone change portion of that last one.
No questions.
All right, then we will open the public hearing. We will close the public hearing and move this on to the action agenda. All right, public hearing to consider general land use amendment from low density to rural estates for property located at 4200 West, 1600 North.
Dallas Buckner, Go Civil Engineering. So this is same concept, general plan amendment followed by a zone change. There's 2 separate parcels right here, separated by a road, equestrian state. Got confused right there. Equestrian is just to the east, and this is 1600 North. So this road splits the 2 parcels. Originally, we had pursued a Board of Adjustments on this one for the zone change, but we're going for the RE zone, which is the lowest density. The general plan on this one is MPD, so this is the parcel that's going to be developed, but the MPD zone is no longer allowed, so we have to establish something, and RE is the most relevant for the use. This is also kind of an interesting one where this is the only parcel in the subdivision that's still in the city. Everyone else de-annexed several years ago. But anyways, we took this to Planning Commission. We got a positive recommendation. Then the piece across the way happens to be Preston Nelson, his father. And so luckily we were able to lump the 2 together for the zone change, because in the RE zone you're only able to do 10 acres or more, and this is a 5-acre parcel. So that's the reason why we're doing the full 25. But
So are they planning on developing that other 20 acres or?
no, this is Preston's piece, which is 20 acres, and it's half a pivot. It's just
Okay,
luckily that his dad owns it across the street, so we were able to lump them together so that Dylan can develop his. He wants to just build a house, everything that's allowed within the RE zone. But with his parcel being only 5 acres, he wasn't able to just go for the RE zone because of that 10-acre threshold.
Does he wish to stay within the city, or is he going to want to de-annex?
He wants to stay in the city.
did you verify if there's a well on there, or where is he getting, there is a well?
Because the nearest water is over at Equestrian.
So the city won't be required with this zone change or anything to provide water in any fashion, correct?
I think that he has the right to hook on to city water, but I don't think he has to. Is that correct?
If he wants to hook onto the city's water system, he'd have to extend the
Okay.
water
So-
system to his
But we don't have
property.
any requirement to do that?
No, we have requirements with sewer, and if he's close enough to a main sewer line, then he'd have to hook on.
Right.
What's the distance, Kit?
It's like 300 feet.
It's like
from your
300,
house.
400 feet. Then you're required to hook on. If you're further than that, then as soon as development gets there, then you're
Okay.
required to hook on.
So we're being asked to make the zone change for the whole parcel, but we're only developing one portion of it. Is there any intent ever to develop the other portion? And is that only there to get the RE designation?
That's only there to get the RE designation. And the reason for that, and that's why we pursued Board of Adjustments
Mhm.
prior to coming through the zone change, because I was trying to get a variance on the restrictions for the 10 acres for the
Right.
RE zone. But then the Board of Adjustments, we'd have to propose an ordinance change. I guess they don't have the leeway to make a variance on that,
Hmm.
was the finding at the Board of Adjustments. And so luckily, there's a relative across the street to get us over that 10 acres. But everything surrounding it is county. And so the RE zone is also the same character as far as not having the curb gutter sidewalk requirements. So you'll kind of have some continuity along the frontage with that, with allowing this zone to match what's out there existing. And then if anyone else develops, you'll have the same borrow ditches along the frontage and all that.
What happens if some of those county properties will eventually want to come back into the city? Do we have to, will they be required to come up to the city standards on the curb gutter sidewalk kind of stuff, or would they leave it existing?
When the property develops, they would.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other council comments before we open the public hearing on this? No? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and move this to our action agenda. Okay, public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the zone from master plan development to single-family R1 and single-family R1 to residential estates for property located at 42 Northwest 1600 North.
Dallas Buckner Go Civil. So this is the zone change portion.
Any questions from council? Having you two down there really does make it harder to know if you have questions. Not you two, these two. All right, then we will open the public hearing. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and move this on to our action agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dallas.
Thank
All right,
you.
we'll move to our staff portion. Consider purchase of a garbage truck. Which, welcome to council, Hunter. We've missed you. How's chip sealing going?
Great.
You still have to say
Good
your name.
afternoon, I'm Kit Wareham. Sorry, Kit. I figure everybody's mad at me this week, so I'm gonna use,
Gonna be someone else?
okay, so in your packet,
But really, you have to actually say your real name.
oh, I do? Shoot. Jeff Hunter, Street Superintendent, Cedar City. Any questions, from, they're right up in the,
Jeff, just so the public knows what we're talking about, tell them
Oh.
what you want to buy and how much.
so we are looking to purchase a new garbage truck for the amount of $271,468.73. It will be the same as the last purchase we made 2 years ago. We've been on a 2-year purchase cycle with our garbage trucks, so it puts them out 6 to 7 years that we're cycling them through. So this is just coming to you. We went through the budget process earlier on, and this is just asking for approval.
Is your proposed cost within your budget?
The budget was $282,
Thank you.
and we'll need, there's a few outfit items that will go into that 271, radio and a few things will be way under the budget of 282.
Right.
So I have a question on all three of these items, and I just want clarity, I guess. When we looked at the 2021 budget and we looked at both capital projects and improvement projects, we had talked about a January cycle of purchase and some that would be purchased immediately depending on funds. And I went back and looked, and I see that part of this is, in the approval came from the C road funds. So I just want to make sure that this funding is in place and it's not any of that wait 6 months process.
So each department gave a schedule of when they were going to order what equipment, and we're on schedule.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to verify. Great.
Somehow Jeff got to the front of the line in his department. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we good with, any other questions? Good with this going on consent?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
hold
Good.
on, do it first. Stop, I have to read my part first.
Okay.
Item number 9, consider purchase of a dump truck snowplow. Now you can do your part.
Do I have to say Jeff Hunter, Street Superintendent again? Okay. Okay, this is for the purchase of a new dump truck slash snowplow truck. The budget on that was $202,000. We're at $197,631. Again, there's a few upfit items that will need to go on to that, but we'll be under the budget.
There any questions?
One question. Sorry, Jeff.
That's all right.
So on both the dump truck and the trash truck, are we increasing our inventory, or are we getting rid of an older one and bringing the new one in?
Okay, so on the dump truck, we are increasing.
Okay.
On the garbage truck, we are struggling to keep our garbage trucks running.
Well,
So we're pulling and parting out.
I see.
We're parting out some of the old ones just to keep the other ones, because back to the garbage truck, the American LaFrance went out of business, and so we can't get any parts for 3 of our garbage trucks.
Yep.
So we've been mixing and matching and just trying to keep them rolling. That garbage truck was actually, the company came to us early on, because that's usually a 9-month build out, but they were building 3 anticipating sales, and they put our name on one, so that particular truck is within a month of being delivered for the garbage truck. The dump truck, we're out about 4 months on the
Got it. Thank you.
on that.
Thank you.
All right, we good with that going on consent?
Mm-hmm.
All right, item number 10, consider the purchase of sander.
Jeff Hunter, Cedar City Street Department. This is for a stainless steel sander that we will put in our bobtail truck that we found it's been quite useful for us in our snow removal fleet. It was kind of sitting out back, and it had a plow for it, so I started using that last winter, and we just need a sander for it. The budget on that one was $19,000, and we came in at
14,870.
$14,870. So,
Any questions on this one for Hunter? Good job, Hunter, thank you.
thank you.
You good with that going on consent?
Pardon me?
Thank you.
No, you're
Yes.
good.
All your items went on consent. Way to go, Hunter. Item number 11, consider quotes for the fleet building vehicle lifts.
Jonathan Stathis, City Engineering Department. This was brought before the council last month for the vehicle lifts for the fleet building. These are the lifts that they use to lift up the large vehicles to be able to work on them. At that time, when we brought it last month, we thought we were getting the best pricing through the government pricing program with rotary lifts. Shortly after that contract was approved, Corey Childs received some correspondence that showed that there might be better pricing available. And so we took a step back a little bit, and we went back out for quotes, and these are the results that we received. And Tinks was the low bidder on the project, and they're a local auto parts store here in town. And as far as the budget, we're still quite a ways under budget, almost 200,000 under budget as far as the total project. And so we'd just like to present these quotes to the council tonight.
So I have a question. I thought that last month when this came forward, we approved that amount of money. So do we need to change that motion? And my second part to that question, then I think you answered, but I'm going to verify. In going back out, we did rebid the entire process, so everybody had the opportunity to rebid.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So legally, do we have to do anything from?
Just make a motion to award the bid or the quote to Tinks. We would do it ourselves as staff, but it's over $50,000, and that's
No,
where
I
our
understand. But we
authority cuts
had
off.
kind of awarded the other one
Yeah, just
earlier.
take that back and.
All right,
award
well,
the
that's
other
my
one.
question. Okay.
All right. Questions? Then do you want this on the action agenda so you can make that motion? Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 12, consider resolution amending the city's consolidated fee schedule.
Clint Pollock with the Police Department, filling in for Chief Adams. So we're looking at certain animals that come into the shelter that either serve no legitimate purpose as a pet, or they do not consider a domestic animal by definition. A domestic animal is one that is sufficiently tame to live with a family, such as a dog or cat, or one that can be used to contribute to a family support. Animals that serve no legitimate purpose as pets include, but are not limited to, feral cats. Feral cats are not socialized to and are extremely fearful of contact with people. Typically, their welfare cannot be maintained in captivity. Feral cats routinely come into the shelter and are not able to be safely adopted to a family, and it is not desirable to euthanize the animal unless it is a last resort. Additionally, other domesticated animals come into the shelter from time to time that are not among the traditional domestic pets. Such animals include chickens, geese, lizards, rabbits, and other similarly related animals. These animals constitute a rarity in the shelter, and most people are not willing to pay the normal $40 adoption fee for a rabbit, lizard, or chicken, nor can they adopt a feral cat as a pet. So our recommendation is to place an adoption fee of $10 for these animals listed above. This will allow for easy adoption of feral cats by ranchers and farmers to be specifically used on the farm or ranch to take care of a mouse problem. And when the occasional lizard, chicken, or rabbit come into the shelter, there exists a smaller fee to remove such animals from being a challenge for the shelter staff.
You did a good job reading that.
Can't
Yes.
go off script at all, man.
Not
Hey.
one, not
It's
one
easier
word.
to look down than to
So
have
how
everybody's
often do you
eyes
get
staring
the
at me.
occasional lizard?
Sometimes they get loose and people don't want them back. I don't know. Couple weeks ago, a month ago, we had a chicken, a turkey, and a duck that nobody ever claimed. We quite often get chickens in there, so it's just easier to.
Had snakes before, yeah.
I just,
Somebody referred to as a turducken, so.
turducken?
Tyler Melling will take all the chickens.
Yeah, I'll take the chickens.
The only
Oh, they,
question, are they, like, do we want to spell it out, like lizard, chicken, rabbit? We don't have it spelled out like that, do we?
So, in the exhibit, I believe I put in
You probably did.
examples of what those could be.
So we've been charging in the past $40 for the feral cats, like any other?
So that's what the fee has been, is $40.
Let's do these.
Because I know some people that took a whole bunch of them last year. So I guess the question I would have is the $10 proposed fee, do we give them any kind of shots or anything when they come in?
So they get the normal vaccinations as if
Right.
they're not fighting them.
Right.
So
So, and what is the cost for us to do that?
$7 or $8.
Okay. So we're kind of at a break even.
Are those
situation.
feral cats spayed or neutered?
No.
Okay.
So we don't, because of the cost.
Right.
We don't do that. So with the original family pets, those have that additional $25 charge, and then they get that reimbursed if they're not spayed or neutered.
I'm just wondering if would this reduction lead to more feral cats?
I guess there's that possibility.
What are you thinking, Councilman?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just.
Oh, sorry, Melanie. Yes, you
I'm,
got your back. Sorry.
Well, I'm allergic to cats, so I don't love them much anyway. But fee structures speak to incentives, and if we're lowering the cost to obtain a feral cat that then could go out and create more feral cats for us to take care of, I just don't know. I don't know if, I guess if your department, if we feel at this point that, if we adjust it and it's fine, then that's great, and maybe we'll revisit this in a year or two if we have a lot more feral cats and need to come back to it. But I have a number of friends that like to feed feral cats, and I try to explain that that's a problem. But so sorry, I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking of being next to a cat. So but anyway, if you guys, I'll defer to your judgment at this point, and then if we need to revisit it, we'll revisit it.
Sir, do you think this will adversely affect the budget for the animal adoption shelter?
It shouldn't, because the majority of the feral cats typically get euthanized because nobody wants them. So when they come in, they stay in our shelter for the 5 business days, and nobody wants to purchase or adopt a feral cat at the $40 or $65 rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so they typically get euthanized, and no rescues will rescue out feral cats. So to try and combat the euthanasia, that the fee schedule change would help in that regard.
Okay.
What about, do we know what the county or what Enoch City are doing as far as feral cats?
The county does not accept cats, to my understanding, in their shelter, and what Enoch does, I don't know.
Okay.
Right.
What do you think, Terry?
I don't think we should encourage people to quit feeding them and starve them, but I don't know. I would like to see them moved out of there quicker than having to put them, if somebody can put them to good use and we can move them along, then I would always rather do that rather than kill them, so.
And we've had a lot of individuals in the last little while that have wanted them for barn cats and for farms and to do useful, give them a
Right.
useful
I think
life.
if we can
and-
move them out, I think that's better.
Yeah, that's what we were hoping for, to also reduce that euthanasia, so.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay. Well, this will go on the, oh, no, that's only part 1. I lied.
So
Sorry. You're done.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Thanks, Clint.
part 2 of the proposed fee changes would be, so right now in the city, we have Dewey Avenue. Dewey Avenue is the only street that has permit parking. The purpose of permit parking is so that commuter traffic can't park on that street. So we make sure that traffic there is for homeowners and for their visitors and families. We've put together a bunch of parking permits that are free at the city, so someone who lives on that street is celebrating a birthday party, something of that nature, they can come in and request some additional permits for their guests. So over the past year, we've had an individual on that street that's come in and requested all 40 to 50 permits, which would leave none for their neighbors. So in response to this, we've tried to figure out, well, how can we do this? Because the purpose of this is so the people that live on the street can have permits for visitors that may come and go. So what staff recommending is we still want people to have enough free ones for the average person. When we looked at it over the past year, the average person requests about 3 to 5 permits. So we're recommending that the first 5 be free, and then anything after 5 would be $10 per permit. If a permit were to get lost, we're recommending that replacement fee would be $5 a permit. I'm not saying that the dollar amount's the magic fit. It just seemed a reasonable amount. But that's just the proposal to the council on how to solve that issue.
What do the permits look like?
Well, I go back a long ways, and I remember history. I remember when this permit went into place in the approximately late 70s. I don't know exactly when it was. But the university had about 2,000 students then, maybe 2,500 students. And there were several professors that lived on that street. Ella Van Groningen lived there, and Carmen Jones lived there, and some other folks. And, of course, they were very concerned about students parking there on their street. I struggle a little bit with this, and it comes back to what I've discussed here many times before. This is not Dewey Avenue's residence street. It is a Cedar City street, and anyone should have the ability to park there as long as they're not blocking driveways and not disobeying the law. So I know this is the only permitted street we have in Cedar City. And I guess I'm wondering, is this forever and always? Is there a statute of limitations on this? And I guess a couple other questions I have is, how many total permits are there for the street?
So I believe there's 50 total permits.
Okay. And that's...
Per day basis then?
Well, I don't know exactly if I think they can request in multiple days. I'm not sure. I can look into that before next week. When it comes to if there's a expiration date on this, there isn't. City ordinance, there's a bunch of different steps that citizens need to jump through and studies and in order to come to the council to get permission for it.
You mean for the permits themselves?
Yeah, to get a permitted street.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was about to say that, yes, it is by the university, but so is 450 West, so is 600 West, so is 700 West, so is 800 West. Do we want to make all of those streets permitted? I mean, I don't know. And then I guess the other couple other questions, and I know Mrs. Henderson lives on that street, but why would one individual need all 50 permits? I mean, what are they doing, number one? And why couldn't, if we leave it permitted, why couldn't we just limit it and say each person gets 5 permits, period, or 3, I don't know what the number is.
So that was the first option staff talked about. Let's just put a maximum number.
Yeah, and that's all you get.
But then the thought we had was, well, what if great aunt Sue is having a birthday party and her 6 kids are coming and her 30 grandkids?
Then you go to your neighbor and say, is it possible, can I have them stay here for 2 days this weekend? We're having a big family reunion, or whatever it is. It's called being neighborly.
Yeah.
I think, but I don't know. That's how everybody else in the city works it.
That's a viable option. If the council just wants to put a max number on it, that's fine with
And
staff.
if I could interject real quick, kind of to one of Scott's points, we have a number of residents that live close to the university and residents that live closer to the university than the parking lots. So on any given day, if you took every student car that was parked in the residences around SU, there are more than adequate parking spaces, especially on the west lot that hardly ever gets used. And I feel that parking is a hot button issue, that the use of this public space in many ways limits our ability to use the private spaces around the the university due to, politics, regulations, whatever that may be. And I feel that if we were to explore some options, as many university towns have done, everyone that I've lived in other than here and or visited, to explore some sort of permitted parking solution within a certain radius of the university. I think it would greatly help ease the tensions between neighbors, landlords, tenants, and students, and we'd have to take a tailored approach. I have some ideas that I'd rather not get into right now, just due to interest of time, but that I've been shopping around to some stakeholders in the area. But I think we could see a lot more flexibility in some of the guidelines for parking and things like that on the private property if we were to explore more options on the public property. And I'd like to at least have some of those discussions, whether as a council and with staff, and talk to SUU, talk to the neighbors. I do feel that what is proposed here, while addressing, the problem at hand, is not, it's kind of a Band-Aid, and this parking issue has become a very divisive issue in the area around the university.
Are there any other council comments? Okay.
Laura Henderson, and I live on Dewey Avenue. So the neighbors that started the ordinance that's in place today was in 1994, and they were very forward-thinking people, and they had fewer students to deal with at the time, but it was a problem. And I truly, truly appreciate their effort, and I know streets around us, in speaking in sort of what Councilman Melling had said, a lot of streets want what we have, because it does help to control student parking when it should be either in a residence hall or elsewhere. So it is kind of an interesting dichotomy, though. We have a residence, 351 Dewey Avenue again, that has exploited that issue and has had sorority parties on that street where they have dominated the parking to the point where anybody near that home has not been able to park. If they have family parties, if they have anything. So, and not to pick on them, but it's an exploitation. So I don't know what the answer is. Currently, each residence gets 2 stickers, and apparently that's for the owners. I have a sticker. And then if you have visitors, you come in and check out a hang tag. That's really, and you can have it for 30 days, which is probably, I don't know, that one's kind of not real effective in my opinion. I mean, that just, because typically visitors don't stay for 30 days. I don't know, maybe some do, but not most. And so having to come back in and check out, and you don't check out the same number, you check out you check in the old tag and you check out a new tag, and then things like holidays are tricky, because if people have a lot of visitors, that becomes tricky. But I don't think that ordinance should be removed, and I really think it should be expanded around the university, because I think that it would help mitigate some of the student parking issues that should be otherwise addressed with their residences. So, thank you.
Hi, Stephen Gwynn. I also live on Dewey Avenue, and I didn't even know this was coming up tonight, but I thought I might add some perspective. My family's lived there since 2001, so almost 20 years, 19 years. And I think Councilman Phillips is right. Most of the time in the past, when somebody's having a big family get-together or something like that, everybody just knows that, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, they're doing their family reunion. We don't worry about calling or getting angry or anything like that. The family, that's a big, long story with, I guess the house is going to be turned into a sorority rental here in the near future. But they had multiple sorority gatherings beginning of last fall, probably 5 or 6 of them, all within 2 months. It caused some consternation on the street, and I assume that's where they were requesting those. But my family, and there are multiple other families on the street who have small children, who often play on the sidewalk, and the permitted parking has been a very key factor in safety on that street. Students still drive way too fast. Other people drive way too fast on that street, but it's a lot fewer than it is on, say, 200 West. We have neighbors and friends on 200 West who've often spoken with us about, well, we wish we had what you guys have, but there's too many landlords on our street. We don't think enough people would vote for it. We don't think we'd have a majority because there's just too many, landlords on our street. But they, our daycare person, she does a little daycare out of her home, very few kids. She lives on 300 West. Very, very close to 200 South, and we've had multiple times where we try to drive there and drop off our kids, and we can't turn in her driveway because the cars are so tightly packed right around the driveway, we can't get into it. So on Dewey Avenue, it's been a great boon. I know there's some people out there who think that it's a public street. I remember somebody defaced the permit parking signs a while back with our taxes. They wrote in red on them, and they were angry about it. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, there's been every year when the students who don't see the signs and don't know will park on Dewey Avenue, there have been many times where my 82-year-old father doesn't have anywhere to park to walk into his own home. Our driveways will hold one car width, 2 cars stacked. That's the way they were done on the big 2 twin homes. Somebody decided that, you could stack cars. Well, that's not very convenient, so we got permits, and we just park on the street in front of our own home. Well, we pay, I don't know how all the revenue works, but we pay property taxes and sales taxes, and the taxes that pay for streets and pay for street upkeep and police and fire and all those things, well, we pay those taxes. So we feel like if anybody ought to be able to park in front of their own home, it ought to be the person who lives there. But when the students, when there's unlimited parking for anybody on residential streets, many people cannot park. And to get into their own home, they have to park 3 or 4 houses away and walk. So I would venture to say that there probably is some people who should have a deference to parking in front of their own home, and it ought to be the taxpayer who's living in that home and paying taxes there to have street access to their own home. As far as I see your quandary about somebody requesting 40 or 50, I think there's lots of ways you could go. There's other problems with people who've moved away and kept their permit and come back and parked later, even though they live somewhere else. But I really think that if it's at all helpful, it's working really well just the way it is. I think you may see as this university grows, other places try to get some type of restriction. This thing about 40 or 50 passes at once, I'd address that with as little and minimal effort as possible because it's working pretty good as it is now, and we're really grateful for it, especially for when it comes to the safety of our kids, because there's not a line of cars blocking the view of kids playing on the sidewalk because of this. So we're really very much in support of it and really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll just speak to that last point about the line of cars. When we, I think it was the first council walk in January, as a school day, and there truly is on the north, so any of those streets, on the south side of the campus, the north end of those streets, the first 4 or 5 houses all have just a line of cars, and it's, and so is that something we do want to address? It's not, it is a public street, all taxpayers pay for that. There's an argument that maybe students do not, but there is ample parking for students, yet they don't use it, and I would at least like to open up those discussions in the very near future rather than, kind of placing a Band-Aid on this situation and having it go away again.
Terry Kenny, I've always been supportive of the parking situation on Dewey Avenue. I've never lived on Dewey Avenue, but I was very aware with people I knew who lived on Dewey Avenue, the challenges that they faced with being able to have anyone come to their house or possibly need to park their own vehicle on the street. I do have a suggestion. It seems like it would be rather easy to keep track of all of this if the color of the permit was changed every year. So it seems like that would make it much easier, and you could avoid the thing of people just collecting permits and then using them year after year in a way that was not to the advantage of the residents there. Thank you.
And I guess to speak to that point too, one of those elements that where this is the only street, I do think it's a lot of work, especially for staff, proportionally, to deal with this one system. If it was more expanded, I think it would be easier to put in certain systems in place that would be able to address some of those things too.
Right. Stephen Gwynn, Cedar City, if I can just, I forgot this, I'm sorry. I thought it might be useful for you guys to know that right now there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's probably 10 to 15 cars, and you guys know it's only a couple of blocks long, so there's a good amount of cars parked on the street every day by residents. Okay, I just remember a few more, so maybe 20. So the road is used by the residents to park their own cars fairly substantially. It's happened in the past, but it's been actually quite a while since I've found anybody, because I thought the exact same thing. Let's change the color of those permits every few years, but that adds a lot of logistics for one street. If we get more and more streets, then, but lately I haven't seen that so much anymore. I haven't, this last probably 2 years, I've very rarely seen somebody who has a poached permit tag on their car. I guess they all graduated, so.
All right. Okay. Any other comments, questions? This will go on the action agenda. Okay. Item number 13, public hearing to consider the revision of the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget to include $3 million of CARES Act funding.
This may be our earliest budget revision, at least in my time here, certainly. As you're aware, we've been...
made it 15 days.
Yeah, 15 days. So we have been officially awarded about $3 million from the federal government through the state of Utah. And it is for the CARES Act, and it is not currently reflected in the budget. And this is the mechanism to put it into our budget so that it can be spent. And the next item will discuss how, or a proposal for how it will be spent. But this is to authorize accepting those funds and expending them.
All right. Any questions from the council? We've talked about receiving this money a few times. This is the formal way to do it. Okay, then we'll open the public hearing. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. And we'll put this on the action agenda.
Did you get a chance to get up?
Do you want to jump up, Hunter?
Did you?
You got halfway out of your seat.
Saw you had pre-verbal tension.
We're getting there?
You're not on the list, Hunter.
Okay, if you look at the next agenda item, item number 14, consider spending of CARES Act money.
I apologize for not reading ahead.
Okay, could you open that PowerPoint up, please?
I know, you were just like super anxious and excited for the
I didn't even see it.
best picture yet.
Okay, so we're going to talk about spending the CARES Act money, and that's our little,
It's a little coronavirus.
it was.
Virus, the 5 balls.
Just hit the back arrow.
Click this one.
There you go.
No,
No, just
click
once.
it there.
There you go.
Yeah, go.
That's our little coronavirus guy. And that's, is this on?
No, it's
Okay, can you go to the next slide, please?
Go to slideshow.
So the state of Utah allocated Cedar City $3,018,784. The state did that on a proportional basis based on population. The two largest counties in the state, Utah County and Salt Lake County, got direct allocations from the federal government. The state chose to, they didn't have to, they chose to divvy up a large portion of the CARES money that came to them to local municipalities and townships, and also counties. Iron County's probably 5 million plus. There's a whole list of them. It's public information. It's on the internet. It's easy to find. The funding's going to come to Cedar City in 3 allotments, roughly about a third each time. The first allotment has already hit our bank account, and the notice that we got said the second and third allotments, both the dollar amount and when the state chooses to distribute them, are subject to change at the whim of the state. So if this,
What do you mean by dollar amount? We're going to go below?
they could change the allocation.
Okay.
They could come out tomorrow and say, just kidding, you get $1 million or $2 million. They could take it back. Okay? There's nothing to lead me to believe that they're thinking about that,
Right.
but they do have that disclaimer in the paperwork.
Okay.
Could you go to the next slide, please?
It should be set up so you can click it now.
Oh. So with these monies, there's a whole bunch of rules promulgated by the federal treasury and passed along to Cedar City. And the 3 basic rules are necessary expenditures incurred to the public health emergency, costs not accounted for in the most recently approved budget, and costs incurred during the period that begins March 1st, 2020. Also, our program, by the contract we entered with the state, ends at the end of November. So anything we haven't spent or purchased and have in hand by the end of November, we can't do. We're supposed to send that money back to the state of Utah. So with all of these treasury programs, they start with these 3 basic concepts, and then they start publishing their guidance. And they expand on the guidance through a couple different rounds of frequently asked questions. So we've received the guidance and we've received the frequently asked questions, and we're going to make a proposal to the council that we spend the $3 million in accordance with the guidance and the frequently asked questions. So the guidance has a section in it that talks about if you are a provider of homeless outreach services and you had additional cost due to the COVID emergency to do additional outreach to the homeless, you're eligible for some of this money. The guidance has a section in it that says if you had to expend money to do distance education or to deliver meals, you're eligible for this money. There's a section in there that says if you are buying equipment or supplies that mitigate the virus or help protect against the virus, that's not a direct quote, that's a paraphrase, you're eligible for the money. There's a provision in there that says if you're a business and you've had a negative impact, again, that's a quote, not a quote, that's a paraphrase. If you've been negatively impacted by the COVID virus, you're eligible for some of the money. And there's a final provision that the city is going to ask the council to approve a large chunk of funding coming to the city that takes some interpretation of the original guidance plus some of the frequently asked questions subsequently promulgated by the Treasury Department. And basically it says if you are a first-line responder, public safety responder, and your duties were substantially related to mitigation of the COVID emergency, you're eligible for the funding. And then the Treasury came back out later and said, as far as substantially related goes, that portion of that criteria, we're going to just deem for administrative convenience that any first-line public safety personnel is eligible and that they're deemed to have been engaged and substantially engaged in COVID relief. So they basically negated that provision about being substantially related and opened up that funding to any first-line public safety responder. Okay. Would you go to the next slide, please? So Cedar City we have 3 slides for Cedar City. These are the proposed uses that Cedar City would like to use the COVID money for. The 2 hand washing trailers, those were items that Chief Phillips brought up. They are mobile. They promote, that we would use them whenever we can get back to having gatherings. We would station them at various spots of the gathering. They have 12 bays on them. And basically they are sinks where people can wash their hands. Economic Development Small Business Program was a program that Danny's office ran. It purchased a bunch of signage and masks and other things for small businesses in the community, and we gave those all away. That cost about $20,000. The match for the Chamber of Commerce grant program was $25,000. Single audit costs. The only thing the guidance was really crystal clear on was you will be audited, and if you mess up, you got to pay the money back. So that Treasury was very clear to tell us that. So the cost of the single audit would be included in this money. The electronic messaging boards could be used at large gatherings to encourage social distancing, mask wearing, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, things like that to avoid the public health emergency. Now, the next group of equipment are basically things that would help keep our public facilities clean. So there's pressure washers. The one the park department requested be used to do park equipment. It's huge. It's got 2 spray units on it. It's the most expensive one in there. The golf course guys would use it to clean the golf carts and their picnic tables and whatnot at the golf course. The aquatic center, could you go to the next slide, please? Would use theirs at the aquatic center to keep it clean. There's a UV floor cleaning equipment that could be used in multiple buildings. The Square Scrub Doodle Deluxe, this is one that it's kind of cool. Bruce found it. It's a little unit that gets in corners and helps you clean the corners of rooms, and it's got, you know, those little green scrubby pads you use to wash. It's got something similar that goes on the bottom. It really scrubs. The name's kind of funny, but
I like it.
Doodle Deluxe. Waxy Versa 2 cleaning caddies. Those would be going in our buildings that have a lot of public contact. Basically, they're a cleaning caddy that allow you to spray down a room. So in our restrooms over here, we would spray them down, and then it has an attachment that allows you to suck all the water back out. There's more to it than that.
Is 5 enough?
So the 5, whenever you see a multiplier of 5 here, the proposal would be to buy one for the aquatic center, the city offices, the theater, the library, and the airport. There are 5 main public buildings. Yes, we would share them with the fire department. Yes, we would share them with Public Works, but they would live in those 5 main public buildings. Yeah, we would even share them with Larry down at the arena too. So, compact disc scrubber that was mostly for up at the pool. A suggested replacement of office furniture. These are typically couches and chairs that are in our offices. They are fabric. They can't really keep them. There's no way to keep them really clean. There's a lot of them throughout the main city buildings, and that line item alone is about $100,000. Replacement faucets, replacement toilet flush, that would be touch-free, cost for a plumber. Once you add in all of our facilities, there are a lot of faucets and fixtures that we can replace. A little caveat on that one, we counted all the stuff in the parks. We may not be able to replace those because, as you guys know, in our parks restrooms, we have stainless steel, almost prison-grade equipment because it gets abused so often. If we can find a replacement that fits in our budget that's touch-free, then we'll look at it. If we can't, we're still going to err on the side of keeping that beefier equipment in there so it doesn't get broken. Electrostatic cleaning equipment. The mayor loves this one because it reminds her of the pictures you see of people in moon suits running around spraying stuff down. That's what it is. It's either a backpack unit or a handheld unit that you could use to spray down public areas like this room, like the theater after a performance. It has a solution in it. It's a bleach-based solution that you would just spray.
Dressing rooms, backstage,
Yep.
everywhere.
Everything. You would spray it and leave it and walk away. You'd close the area down for a little bit while it dries and then open it back up. Next slide, please. Masks.
I'm not the only one that loves that idea.
Yeah, but there's no moon suits. We're not buying moon suits. Masks and shields and portable hand sanitizer units were requested by the events folks. They want to use them when they do the half marathon is the one that's coming up the quickest, but they would use them for different events.
Paul, what
Yes,
about
sir.
those for buildings?
So
You're
some of
talking
our,
about the stand uprights where you can just, when you come in, you can,
yeah, some of our buildings already have those. And if this budget is approved and there's money in there, then we can purchase some more. They're not very expensive. I think they're like $200.
yeah.
And that, from what Brad told me, that comes with a certain amount of replacement containers too.
Yeah, I think those are important.
Yeah, they're popular around town, the city.
The last item in there is the first line public safety payroll and benefit costs from April to November. So the way we calculated this, let me just tell you how we limited that cost a little bit, and it's still a big number. The way we calculated it is we took the first payroll in April, which lags back a little bit into March. So last week of March and the first of April. And then we ran it through the end of October, which runs it the first week or so. Or actually, we ran it to the last payroll in November that we could get before the deadline with our contract with the state. So that's the timeline we looked at. And we looked at first line public safety as police and fire. Within the police department, there are officers that do a whole bunch of different things. There's officers like Mr. Pollock in the back of the room, who typically is more of an administrative role. And there's detectives and there's lieutenants and chiefs, and we excluded all of them. And we excluded everybody but the guys that are out on the street. With the fire department, there's folks like Mr. Schertz and Mr. Phillips who, yes, they still go to fires, yes, they still participate in fires, but their chief business operation duty is administrative, or for Schertz's line of work, he's more into plan reviews and inspections and things like that. So we eliminated all those, and we just took the payroll for the folks that pull shifts and are in the firehouse. That single line item is the city subtotal is $2.4 million. That single line item for the first line public safety defenders or payroll costs and benefits for April through November is $1.8 million, almost $1.9 million. So that's what the city has substantiated that we would ask the council to approve. Could you go to the next slide, please? We reached out to the Karen Share and asked them if they had some costs that met those criteria as discussed earlier, and got an email back, just really preliminary, just to get a budget idea. They had some temporary intake housing costs, April through October. They had some street outreach equipment and personnel costs. They had some additional staffing and the director's time spent dealing with COVID-19. In total, the amount they sent us was $130,000. Could you go to the next slide, please?
Real quick on that one, where there may be auditing, or are we factoring in some time too for staff to really scrutinize those to ensure that we'd pass audit for the other organization as well?
So we'll skip to that part of the discussion. If you approve the budget, the proposal would be to enter a contract with the school district and the Karen Share directly. Part of that contract would be various items, and I've kind of sketched out a few ideas. And one is to propose a statement that has the recipient affirm that they are using a valid purpose, and we would stick in the purpose from the CARES Act guidance for each individual. The next would be to have them list out the things that they're going to spend the money on or use the money for that hit that criteria that we've already listed, and they would have to affirm that that money goes for that criteria. And then they would have to come up with a statement that says they're aware of the federal guidelines and they know what they are and they know what the limits are. They're aware of the auditing requirement, and they are going to indemnify and hold the city harmless. If we get dinged, basically, if we get dinged in the audit, they got to pay us back. That's the way we propose to handle it.
And that affirmation would be sufficient generally for the city's end.
It would give us an avenue if something went wrong to go after them for the money.
Okay.
And I think that's what our interest is if we decide to go down this road.
Right.
So the school district, we asked them the same kind of questions. They said between Wi-Fi hotspots for distance learning, meal delivery, and meal fuel delivery fuel costs, they put a number of $235,000 that they could justify. Those are quick numbers from the school district and Karen share. It wasn't meant to be a deep dive. It was meant to be, here's the broad parameters. What do you think fits? Could you go to the next slide, please? Iron County, as you guys know, is doing a small business program. Currently, the estimated amount in that program between Iron County, Cedar City, Enoch, and Parowan is $5.5 million. That's set to roll out in the next few weeks. And with your permission, we'll propose a work action meeting next week to look at their interlocal agreement with the city. As soon as they have their, I've seen a draft copy of their application and their guidelines. As soon as I get it cleared with Dan, I'll send those out to you guys. Dan Jessen is kind of the point guy with the county. And I know the city council has recommended that we support this endeavor to help small businesses, so that would be the last chunk of the funding. Could you go to the last slide, please? So the funding recommendations from your staff are in the following amounts. For Cedar City Corporation, the staff recommends that we fund the $2.4 million. The small business grants, we recommend that we fund $515,000. And the school district and the Karen share, we recommend that we fund those at $50,000. It's not all they asked for, but it is substantial. The small business grants, talking to Dan Jessen over the weeks, they would have loved to see the whole $3 million. And everybody that I've talked to about this CARES Act money, the constant feedback I get is, yes, we would like to participate. We could all use money. So,
and with can I interject a tiny bit?
Sure.
So part of the reason the Karen share and the school district aren't the full amount is both organizations also received money from other CARES type programs. So the school district has received a chunk of money, and the school district has, those are the same entity. And the Karen share has received some money as well. And so that is part of why, and the county technically can assist in both of those organizations as well if they so choose.
The proposal is to distribute the funds. Jason's going to book them in the budget. He's going to put a line item in administration so we can keep everything running through one area. We can track everything. When we get audited, we can show them exactly where everything went. The proposal is to distribute all that funding amount in 1/3 increments as we get the money.
So just to clarify the record, since this presentation is published, that was intended to be 3 million, not 3 billion on this slide.
Did I put too many zeros?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, get rid of some of those
Okay.
zeros.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're only recommending 3 million, not 3 billion, but also.
That would be exciting.
California, I guess.
Right.
No, it's on Cedar City.
So these other Enoch, Parowan, Paraguna, and Iron County, are they in similar fashion applying a significant portion to that first line responder fund, or are the cities tending to do that, but not the county? Could you?
Don't know the answer to that.
Okay, just because I do worry that we may have some balking from where we represent roughly 2/3 of the county population, and contributing 10% of the total projected business grant fund. That's anyway. I'd just be curious what those other entities are planning, and if they're planning to make that same application, that fund may be significantly smaller. I'd just be, if we could find that out sooner than later, that would help.
I don't know if they've all published what they're gonna do.
I have some information on the county side, but not on the other
And the
communities.
jail doesn't qualify. So that's one thing from the county side. Is
You do have a comment?
Do you want to? Yeah, I was gonna say you can come up, but you have to come up and you have to say your name.
Press knows.
Don't even.
Kelsey Cook. So I was at the county commission meeting Monday. The county's using $680,000 for direct COVID-19 expenses. Then they're doing roughly $500,000 as a reimbursement to the county for frontline public safety, and then they're doing almost $4.5 million for the grant program.
Yeah, that's how we get to over 5 million.
Yeah.
So the county's frontline public safety is different than ours. You got to exclude the jail, you got to exclude their sheriff administrative staff. They don't have a fire department. So that's something to consider. Now, this is staff's proposal. If the council wants us to change it, please tell us and we'll change it.
Could we get any verification on what the school district and the care and share is either getting from Iron County or other CARES Act funding?
I will ask
If,
them.
if you can ask
And a
on that.
breakdown of some of those costs, because some of that, I understood some of that meal delivery stuff, they'd already been funded and paid for.
Okay.
And that may be referring what you're talking about, Mayor, but I'd like to see those figures.
Yeah, if we could get a
Beforehand.
verification there. The other thing.
So on the county's costs for meal delivery,
School district.
sorry, the school district, Wi-Fi hotspot support and distance learning was $70,594. Meal delivery bus driver payroll cost was $152,030.98. Meal delivery fuel costs were $12,912 for a total of, rounded out, $235,537.
Right, but my
And we'll
my
ask
understanding
if
was
they
that they'd
got
already.
money from someone else.
Right.
The other question I had is, I've heard discussion about Shakespearean Festival not qualifying for the public grant portion of it because they'll be over the income limits, the revenue limits.
It's very possible.
And I'm wondering if we want to consider giving them any kind of a line item like we're doing with the care and share.
I think it's something we have to look at because hospitality is a thing that's been absolutely hit the hardest in this whole thing. Hotels, restaurants, and entertainment. And because of their, I talked to Dan Justin a little bit the other day about it, and because of their projected ticket sales income, they are beyond the limit of what the criteria is for the grant program, so they don't qualify.
So two things about the grant program. There's a couple different ways we can look at that if you guys want to set money aside for Shakespeare specifically. The county has told us that they would promulgate their rules for the grant program, but if the city wants to say something different, we're more than welcome to do that for the city's portion of the money. So that'd be one way to do it. That way is kind of clumsy and confusing because all the applications go through the county and it might lead to some confusion. The other way you could do it is to work with Utah Shakespeare Festival and ask them to calculate how much revenue they anticipate losing due to the COVID-19 shutdown. And they can give you a number, and then the council can decide how much of that number you want to offer relief to, similar to what we did with the school district and the care and share. The school district and care and share didn't get TRT money, and they didn't get RAP tax money. So I can't remember the RAP tax amount, Tyler, 80-ish?
82,700.
So $82,000 in RAP tax and $15,000 in transient room tax money for this coming fiscal year. Last year it was $30,000 in transient room money and a similar amount of RAP tax. So arguably the city has made some contributions to that entity. If the council wants to contribute more, that's what we would need to do in this budget process.
They would normally bring in between $4.5 and $5 million in ticket sales. which they will not have.
And the reason we specifically stuck to the school district and Karen Chair was because those are the two entities
That it spells out in
that
the
it spells
criteria.
out in the Treasury guidelines as being related to this CARES Act funding.
Right.
So
Right.
please realize if the council wants to do a line item specifically for Shakespeare Festival because they had to close down and missed out on a season of ticket sales, there's a number of other groups that are in the same boat, whether it's Utah Summer Games or whether it's the Master Singers or
Simon
whether it's
Pest
Neil
or-
Simon.
But they will all qualify into the grant program because their annual revenues do not exceed $3 million.
Correct.
So they can get
Smaller
it.
entities could apply through the
Yeah.
county, correct, because it's
Right.
profit and nonprofit over there.
Correct.
I don't know if there's other larger grossing entities that we would need to look at that are over $3 million in sales.
Yeah, I don't think there is, but there could be. So I think
that's the
that has to
proposed
be
budget.
considered.
If you guys want to, if the council wants us to change something, please let us know and we'll change it. But the proposed idea is, once you guys give us the budget amount, we will go, Jason will put it in a line item for admin and we'll go spend it according to the budgeted amounts that you told us to spend.
Right.
And just one more time, the rough timeline for those 3 distributions.
Don't know.
Okay.
The first one's here.
First one's here, and we know
Okay.
that. Everything I read, the contract I read, all the guidance online I found, even when I emailed the fellows that administer the program, they're not sure on when the next 2 amounts are coming out.
They're hanging on to it. They want a lot of interest off that $1.3 billion they got.
Well, and I guess my only other point that I'd like to bring up this evening would be, are we as a council okay with even distributions, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, for each of these line items, or do we feel that there are some items that maybe should be prioritized in that first payment? I personally, I mean, small business grants, I think, maybe not all, but a larger point, I think, would be, or portion, that's what I was trying to say, a larger portion would be perhaps warranted, since the businesses are, if they need the funding now, they need the funding now, whereas the city would be seeking, in large part, reimbursement.
Can I, at least as far as the sanitation purchase items, part of the reason that we split it this way is because when this money goes out, you're going to have a lot of entities trying to purchase probably the same types of items.
And please remember that the state rules are, if you don't have the money spent and the thing in hand before the end of November, you got to give the money back.
Right.
So the city's list, yes, it's 2.4 million, but approximately 600,000 of that, rough numbers again, is for tangible purchases.
Right.
And if we wait until October to try, we won't make it.
And I
that
realize.
was why we wanted to do this, how we were distributing it, is so that we could start on the purchase items, so that we could try
Well-
to get them and get them in hand
Well, we need them.
and get and start utilizing them.
And I realize that. I would also rather not wait until the last payment for that, a significant chunk of the business grants. If there was maybe a way we could reallocate, even if it was in the second payment, or, maybe some wiggle room, but to try to get some of those distributions earlier, and then the ones that are not for tangible purchases for the city, if we could have those for later, realizing that those may not be available if the state changes its rules, but I think the businesses that have been directly impacted are hurting a little more than our tax revenue has been.
I do think there's always that probability, Councilman, but I think it's highly unlikely that the state will change a lot of the funding. Now, it's always possible, but it's pretty much been established across the state. we know what we got from the federal government, so it's just a matter of how the state chooses in the legislature, and haven't made that assignment already, so it can always happen, but I think it's pretty highly unlikely that it will change dramatically. And I understand that if we vote next week to approve the budget addition, that we have the flexibility of $3,018,650 to within our budget to utilize.
So, we've been talking about this in terms of setting up a budget for the expenditure of this money.
Mhm.
Now, this is not the city budget, so it doesn't take public hearings and
Right.
and it doesn't take any of that to change it. So as we go through this, if we get into August or October, and there's a significant push on the small business front, or there's a significant press from the school district or one of the other people that are chosen to get some of this money, council could come back and tell staff to change. Right? The proposed how we spend it and how we get it out the door, we suggested thirds. Again, we have tangible stuff we need to purchase, but thirds seemed as fair as any other way to do it. That's how we're getting the money. That's how it should go out. But if you guys have a different approach, that's fine too. Anyway, that's the whole presentation.
So I guess the question is if we want to make some proposed adjustments.
Why don't we treat it the same way we do every year when we do the
Community promotion
community
grants?
promotions, where we have a line item in there and we have various entities come and apply for that. And then the council gets the presentation, the proposal to spend the money, and then you guys write down where you want to see the money go. We'll send that around so you guys can see commonalities, and we'll meet next week. We'll publish it, and everybody
Okay.
can say this is where we think it should go, and then we'll have to probably horse trade and compromise.
Right, sure.
So this will go on the action agenda so everyone can now digest it and think about it over the next
Mr.
week.
Bittman, I have one last question.
Thanks for the zero. Zeros.
I do have one last question,
Yes,
though. On the recommended amount for the public safety employee situation, the 1.8 million, whatever it ends up being, since that is something that we've already budgeted for our 2021 year, do we go ahead and we expend the grant side of it and then we put the other in some kind of a reserve or something? Or what do we do with those kind of funds?
I would suggest you don't touch them until at least the audit's over.
Right.
One. And then I would suggest that whatever proposal's made has to come back for the council.
Okay,
So, look, it's general fund money.
sure.
So you could conceivably spend that $1.8 million, assuming that we don't have any budget shortfalls and we don't need it to backfill payroll. You could spend it on anything you can spend general fund money on. That's
Okay.
everything from fixing the control units for the HVAC in this building.
Wouldn't that be a novel idea?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Mr. Decker's roof at the library is probably going to need to be replaced. The theater's roof's probably going to need to be replaced. The roof on this building is going on, 20 years old? We're on, right about there. So, as far as general fund expenditures
Yeah.
for that money, you
Oh,
guys
there's
see
no
the-
problem.
You guys see the list that comes through every year, and you know that there's more general fund needs than there is money.
Mr. Hunter could spend that in an afternoon.
I can see
Hunter
the
could buy,
wheels are
he could
turning
get
back there.
dump truck silly. Thank you.
So we'll
Thank
put this
you.
on the action agenda, talk about it next week.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Item number 15, consider a four-way stop sign on Old Highway 91 at Green Lake Strip.
Okay, a month or so ago, a lady came into council meeting with some concerns on the new Maverick station going in and out on the south interchange and the increase in traffic out there. So
I got my
we went
jacket
ahead and
on.
looked at that and did some traffic counts out there with all the residential neighborhoods that are in there. Plus, you got 3 or 4 motels and other businesses, and based on those estimated traffic counts, it showed that we could warrant a four-way stop out there on the south entrance to the Maverick station. So with that four-way stop, you'd have that south entrance to the Maverick station, you'd have Greens Lake Drive, and then you'd have Old 91 traffic that comes up from the two motels and then all the subdivisions that are behind those two motels. So we're, based on that warrant study, we're recommending to go ahead and put that four-way stop out there. We wouldn't do it until the Maverick was, just before the Maverick opened up. But we feel that four-way stop will help that potential traffic issue out on that section of town. So,
Could you bring up that map, Kit? Because I have a couple of questions on it, maybe.
You are?
Yeah, there's a
You
lot
must be
of
easily
arrows
confused.
out there.
And that's different.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions and concerns. If you look at the city, first of all, the city trail that comes, the East Bench Trail that comes off right through there, and then I know that the dike is there and there's a bridge that goes over that dike.
Yeah.
Is it possible that we can, as part of this process, if I want to get to the other side of 91, it's going to be safer for me to go down to the crosswalk, right? The proposed new crosswalk. So we need to finish paving that part of the trail that goes where it's left off down to the crosswalk. Because if I want to go across and continue on across the bridge and over to the Cross Hollows, that's number one.
And I might comment right now, there's a barricade across before you can go across that little bridge that was put in. There's a concrete barricade there. So I don't know why, but that forces people out into the street.
We put the barricade up because a number of years ago, somebody fell down right where that.
Where the bridge is?
Yeah, I don't know if we had the bridge in, but we got a claim and it cost us a lot of money. Somebody fell and got hurt there. So
On
we put the barricade.
on the paved part, or was it dirt?
No, it was on the. On
You're saying it's a bunch of lawyers' fault?
Well, no, we didn't trip. It was some fellow walking back from Applebee's or something to his hotel, and we got. So that's why the barricade got put up.
Okay,
And
I do-
It could go. We could do something.
Yeah, I just think that with the La Quinta there now and different things and the Maverick going in, there's going to be more traffic from people going over to get convenience store stuff and going back, and the same thing with the Holiday Inn and Suites and the Spring Hill Inn and Suites. So I just want to make sure that we have good pedestrian walkways that way as well. My other concern, and I don't know if this is our decision, Mavericks, or how we do it, but if you look at the what I would call the north access into Maverick, where it says access on south side of city, pump station access, is that the one I'm looking at?
Yeah, right.
No, the other one, the Maverick access out only, Maverick access right there. So wouldn't that make more sense if it was an in only? Because aren't most people going to come from Main Street or off the freeway and around the corner to pull into Maverick? Because if I'm coming out, I've got to cross traffic and have them come out at the four-way stop.
Well, that's what Maverick had shown on their plans. We can talk to them and see if we can change that. If it's going to work better. The thing with that access right there is there was nothing across. Usually, you like to line up your accesses
Right.
across the street, and there
Correct.
was nothing across the street to line that up with. So
Right.
we'll probably have to make some adjustments.
But it seems like if I'm coming out of Maverick after gassing up and I'm crossing over a lane of traffic, it'd be better if I was at a stop sign.
Yeah. And then the next one going north, it's saying that it's lining up to the access to the to the hotel, and that's to access the pump station, but the hotel access is way back.
Yeah, that's right, back in here. That's the car lot here.
Car lot, yeah.
And then the motel's back in here.
Right, but you've got this over here aligned with access to motel. And I don't know what that's referring to, because the motel access is clear up to the top.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, that's probably pointed at the wrong spot. That's the motel car lot access, so we'll have to make some adjustments, but.
So will that access move further north then?
Well, that's on their initial plans that Maverick showed, that's where they showed their accesses. And then we're trying to get them to line up with either an access across the street.
Yeah,
or-
exactly.
Or the road.
Because that's going to become a very busy intersection.
Once they get their site plan finalized with all the accesses where they're going to be, we'll make some adjustments on that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
But you have that in and out access down at the four-way stop,
Yes.
where it says in and out,
Yeah.
right at the four-way stop,
Yeah.
out of the Maverick.
I
But-
really like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, but Scott brings up a good question. The Trails Committee has been trying to figure out how to get across this mess for, gosh, Ken, how many years? They just haven't been able to come up with a good solution. This is getting there, maybe to give them some access so they can get across. The only problem I see is if they have to come down to the crosswalk and go across, then they've got to cross the in and out driveway of the Maverick as well,
And then maybe do we go down
which is, I don't know, and we don't have any sidewalk on the other side of the intersection of Greens Lake, and that's always been an issue. Because they really want to get from there to the flyover,
Yeah,
which is the old, that's the goal.
exactly.
And they would love to have that done yesterday. So I think we need to keep that in mind
Let's put some
and
sidewalk.
work with Maverick, whatever it takes to get that accomplished. Because right now it's just sitting there because can't figure out how to get across Old Highway
And there's likely
91 or
gonna be a lot
whatever.
of foot traffic
And there will be a lot of
around that
traffic.
area.
There will be a lot of traffic.
They're going to come from the
Granted.
hotels and they're going to walk in
They
and out
will.
of there.
So,
The neighborhoods.
Yeah.
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 So,
But you're right, we need to extend the trail down to the intersection, for sure. Yeah, because we're not gonna cross where the trail is, right there.
no.
But thank you for doing this
Yeah.
because I think this is very important.
Good,
Okay.
great
So are we
idea.
good with our four-way stop going on the consent agenda?
Yeah, with
Yeah.
modifications to it. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Okay, we'll get those done. No roundabout, huh?
All right, item
Pardon?
number 16, consider engineering service agreement between Cedar City, Enoch, and Avenue Consulting for the Cedar City and Enoch Transportation and Active Transportation Plan Project.
Paul Bittman, Cedar City Manager. So, do you have that PowerPoint, Kit?
Which one that is?
I'm going to extend apologies for our vendor. They were not able to be here tonight.
Or Enoch.
Or Enoch. Rob's not here. Darn Rob. It's the one you emailed me earlier today.
Yeah, let's see, I've got mine.
Well, while he's looking for that, I'll try to do it verbally instead of relying on technology. So, as you know, Cedar City and Enoch were jointly awarded just shy of $100,000 from UDOT to do a transportation master planning work. And then the Southwest Utah Public Health Department kicked in another $15,000. Our share is going to be about $3,000, and so is Enoch's. So we're up to about $115,000 for the total project. We put out an RFP. We got 3 responses, 3 or 4, and we had it screened by a group that consisted of myself and fellows from Enoch and Iron County and UDOT, and the recommendation was to go with Avenue Consulting. And in your package, you have a copy of the proposed contract. Now, basically, the proposed contract is our standard engineering services agreement contract with Avenue Consulting scope of work attached. So they are going to propose to do our master planning work, do a transportation master plan for Enoch and Cedar, and give recommendations on how we can tie our two systems together, so that portion of the unincorporated county that sits in between us, how our traffic should flow through there. They're also going to look at active transportation needs and how we could tie our two systems together as well. They're proposing to do all of this within 10 months, kick off in late July and end in early April. The proposal includes a lot of public outreach through surveys and web-based materials. There's also some public outreach sessions in Cedar City and in Enoch City. So there will be opportunities for folks to come in and tell us either where our transportation and active transportation systems fall short, or where they're good, or whatever they want to tell us. They can come in and tell us. They plan on producing one of the big selling points in their proposal was they tout themselves on being able to produce graphic material that is really understandable and easy to follow, so that instead of only having a single map and not a lot of narrative, we can have something more robust for the public, so that in the future they can have a better idea of what our transportation and active transportation goals are. Anyway, we'd like to recommend that you enter the contract with Avenue Consultants. They've actually already signed it. They signed it without even requesting that we put a list of our duties in there. So I read that as they're eager to get working and eager to get going.
Do we have any notion yet of sort of who is on this steering committee, or who's on the committee for the master plan?
Nope.
Okay.
We would get a steering committee. It would most likely be folks from Enoch and Cedar, and we would also probably ask Reed Erickson to be involved.
Yeah. Because I know the Active Transportation Committee is really interested in this and wants to be involved in the process, whether it's public meetings or whatever it is, but I just want to make sure that's included in there as well, and we have some folks involved in that.
Okay. Anything else?
We good with this going on the consent agenda?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hey, the good thing is this, so we talked last week and you guys asked about the general land use plan. We're a little behind on that one. We hope to bring it to you the 1st of August, but with the timing of the two, we should have the roads done before the general land use plan, and they can be merged together and married up. So that might work out okay. Thank you.
Okay. Item number 17, the rec center.
Okay, can you pull that one up? Good evening, everyone. Ken Nilsson, Leisure Services Director. So as Kit's finding that, it was suggested several weeks ago that the staff bring some information forward pertaining to the MAC Center that council has requested. So this is going to be a presentation, kind of a four-headed monster, I guess. I'm Monster One. Jen will come up and talk about her aspects, followed by Chris, and then Jason will follow up with the budget information. So if you could go to the next one, Kit, please. So how this came about with some of this information. So the Leisure Services Master Plan, which was in 2017, which many of you know is on our website, they went and had community needs assessed by town meetings held on November 10th and January 10th, along with a survey hosted online, which ran from November 11, 2016 to January 31, 2017. And work meetings were held in the Master Plan Committee to gather their insights. Many of you were involved in that aspect. And so that's how the Master Plan began to take effect. Next slide, please, Kit. So the survey gathered information from participation and facility use and some of those questions on what the citizens felt that was needed in the community. And they would what they would like to see. So the results ranked as the following things you see. Number 1 was indoor walking track. Number 2 was multi-use gymnasiums, which includes basketball, volleyball, pickleball, all the events that we talk about that go into multi-use areas, and then a field house. Those were the top 3 of that survey. Next slide. Thank you. So the master plan concluded that the priorities for the new amenities be done in the following order. So the Lake at the Hills, which everybody knows is very popular. People would like to see some landscaping and amenities.
And free.
And free, correct. So as you know, we are involved in that continually. We put the trail in place. We just finished the parking lots. We have capital improvement funding for the fishing dock that will be going in this year. So landscaping design, some shade structures coming. They're being delivered on the 20th of this month. So that will provide some shade structures for the picnic tables and the area on the beach. So those amenities are continual. We're looking to, once the shade structures goes in, I had a conversation with Mr. Bittman and the mayor, and we would make the landscaping around the beach structures nicer. Put in, we don't want to do exactly lawns per se, but we want to make it a pavilion nice, some shade, some trees, some of those aspects that gives it the ability to stay a long time. Right now, if you go to the lake, you better have a lean-to or a shade structure because you're going to cook.
It was busy today.
It's busy every day. That parking lot is packed every day.
Yep.
So it's a great amenity. People use it all day. The evenings are great. It's a great service for the area.
Any chance with our new dump truck that we're getting that we could get some new sand brought in there?
You can get new sand. The problem is that we tell people you can't get the beach sand because that's going to end up to all the neighbors to the north.
Yeah, because of the wind.
So we're in a hurry.
Yeah.
So we're going to add sand. It's just got to be a little. It can't be the
coarser.
nice. Yes, it can't be the nice soft stuff, right? So this number 2 was the baseball, softball upgrades. We put lights in at the hill, so all those complexes has it. Well, the bicentennial building and complex was improved. The parking lot, the shade structures, the sod in between. All the things that go on. If you go out there on a tournament weekend, which is every weekend now, that place is unbelievable. And it serves a great purpose for not only our community on a nightly basis, but also for all those tournaments that are coming in on the weekends. People rave about how nice that complex is, right with the park. We'll finish the landscaping within the next month around that park, and then we'll have an outstanding place. So those things are involved. Number 3 was the multi-use gymnasiums. So that is phase 2 of the Hills complex, and that's my portion to begin with. So I'll turn it over to Jen to continue.
Jennifer Weaver, Sports and Recreation. This next portion of our presentation is just a PowerPoint that we had put together in the last couple of months to try to help us get a vision as to what a community center would be fulfilling for our community. Its idea is to bring all the community members to have a great place for people to come and participate in, to enhance their quality of life, to bring our community together, to do lots of different types of activities. And so we're just going to go through these next few slides fairly quick. I do believe this was sent to you guys a few weeks ago, but I don't think the public or anybody else has seen this yet. So some of the things that will be included into this new phase would be the 3 full-size gymnasiums, the walking and jogging track, the cardio equipment area upstairs, the weight and fitness area upstairs. We already have the 3 multi-purpose rooms, but that kind of goes hand in hand. Once we get the daycare, the usage of those rooms can go up, and so we wanted to kind of include that in this as well. The lobby is already there, but we want to enhance and improve the lobby, and then the outdoor patio play area, obviously we already have some amenities there, but we're upgrading that as well, kind of along with as a total project. So this PowerPoint includes all of that.
Is it when you say outdoor patio player, is that the area around the outdoor pool and the current basketball court?
Yes, so it's actually the current basketball court, which is not used a lot.
Right.
So we kind of have a redesign for that going. Okay, perfect. Okay, go ahead into the next one. So these next few slides are just going to show some ideas and visions for people that were wondering what type of activities could go on in a community center. And first of all and foremost, this is what we do right now on a minimal basis, and we want to be able to increase that, the numbers and the activities that we can do by having more facilities. And so we could do youth sport leagues. Go ahead and go to the next one. The adult sports, which we don't do very much of right now, but is requested. Go ahead. A dodgeball type leagues, that's another highly requested sport that we don't facilitate right now. Pickleball, the only pickleball courts we have right now are outside at SUU, and they're pretty well used. And so this indoor Mac Center will have 9 pickleball courts. One thing that I get a lot of requests for that we have not been able to provide a lot of is adaptive sports for youth and adults. The idea of having the batting cages drop down from the ceiling in the gymnasiums would make it a use for those during the off season when you can't get outside. You could get inside and use that for baseball, softball type use. These are some ideas of things that, depending on the programming and what we do in space usage, but these are just some classes and types things that could go on within the multi-purpose rooms or within the gymnasium area. So spin class has been popular, cheerleading classes and competitions. Go ahead. Different types of fitness classes. You see those all over the place, and they're quite popular. Martial arts classes. After school programs. I know since this has been even just started as far as planning the whole community center, for a long time we've talked about trying to do some after school programs in those multi-purpose rooms for kids who need it after school, maybe get some busing and stuff from the schools up to the community center for parents who have needs to have their kids stay a little longer or special needs. Go ahead. Some ideas it's not all about physical activity, but some of it would be providing space for the STEM type things. If we want to do engineering, math competitions, science competitions, then we'd have a little bit larger facility to house more people for that type of a thing. Archery classes, that's something we used to provide a little bit, but we haven't had a place to do, so that could happen as well.
That could happen in the gymnasiums?
Yeah. These are a couple things that we can add in, like the shuffleboard idea. That's just a rolled out mat that you buy that you can put on any flat surface gym floor. That would just be kind of an added fun thing for socializing or events. Of course, different type of social dance classes.
When we can do that again.
Yes, when we can touch and socialize. Other type of youth dance classes, obviously. And then music classes can be held, different things, space for vocal or instrumental classes as well. Art classes, that's a big thing to have lady paint night and different things you can go on, or craft ceramics, etc. Another big plus would be a holiday type of event where you could use the large space of the gymnasiums to set up a big craft fair or holiday fair, and or just using the multi-purpose rooms for some different holiday type events. Okay, so then the other addition, we already have the lobby area there, but we wanted to enhance and increase the usage of that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. One idea is to use a portion of that large lobby for what we call a soft play area. That's just kind of an area where parents can walk in, let their little toddlers play on a little kind of like playground type thing where they sat and watched or waited for older kids in classes. The other idea that we've had is a bouldering wall, which is similar to a climbing wall, but the bouldering wall does not need to have staff attendance there because it only goes so high. So it's just a safe place for kind of the, older kids, maybe ages 5 and up or so, and then up to maybe just young teenage kids where they can climb and be entertained. That would also go in the lobby area. Some other ideas we thought of if we could have some roll-out putting greens in the gymnasium area and or the lobby area where you could do a little bit of fun like that. Then, of course, a big component of this new addition would be the daycare facility, because that would open up the ability to have so many more patrons come in during the daytime hours or evening hours that have little ones that need to be watched, and while the parents could go work out and exercise, and or while they're in swim lessons or whatnot with the older kid, then they have a place for their younger child to be watched, and so that's a good addition. In the upstairs area above the gymnasium, We're planning on putting a fitness area. Go ahead. And that basically is, the fitness area is more like a cardio type machine. Treadmills, bicycles, ellipticals, and then across the way we would have some machine type weight things, leg extensions machines, shoulders, whatnot. That would be across the way, kind of two separate areas. And then of course the popular thing and much wanted is a walking track, an indoor walking track for the community. That will be a great addition, and if you've seen the renderings, which I think you'll see later tonight, along that side of the lake, we have planned a big glass window that will just be beautiful to look out over the lake at the hills for that area. The outdoor pool patio area, go ahead and go to the next slide. Right now, the idea is to put a couple pickleball courts out there for outdoor pickleball, just a little bit for people who are just coming to the community center, want to go out and play. Of course, there won't be enough pickleball courts to hold a whole league or whatnot, but it will facilitate that starting. Cedar City really does not have a lot of pickleball area, which is becoming very popular in many communities, so that's kind of a start for that, to introduction. Go ahead, and then in the corner near, kind of across from the school, if you go out to the swimming pool right now, it's just kind of a big empty concrete cement blank spot. The idea is come to either put like an interactive or parkour playground, kind of like an American Ninja Warrior type thing. And so that will fulfill that space, make it a little bit more appealing to come up and visit the community center as well.
And just so the council remembers, the outdoor side and the indoor play stuff was funded through this year's RAP tax.
Yes. Yeah. So that's already started and in the works, it sounds like. So that's amazing. Another portion that I want to address, so my job is to program activities in the community. And the biggest difficulty I have is scheduling the facility, the gymnasiums. So it's been asked several times, what gyms do we have available for Cedar City to use right now currently? We are not able to ever use an LDS church. So that's been thrown out there. That is just something that's not available, never has been for years. The other couple places that have been taken off, if you notice this list of availability, I will just go through it really quick. Three Peaks has a half court. You can't play a game on a half court. So we facilitate that for practices minimally. I think last year we were allowed about 9 hours a week in that gym. Not a lot. Iron Springs, there was a 4-week period last year where we could not get in at all. And then we use it for practice only. It has no spectator space. North Elementary is also the half court space. The ones that we use most of the time are the two middle school areas. They have a main gym and an auxiliary gym. Not great with some of the seating situations in the auxiliary gyms for the things that we'd like to do. And then those are also very limited time spaces because the high school teams also actually practice at their middle schools. So you're competing with high school practice and border league type practices, middle school age sports as well. So we get in some of the time, but not all the time. And then sometimes as we have it scheduled, then we get dismissed at times. Southern Utah Sports Academy, we've used somewhat, but they have been succeeding in their programming the last few years where we are getting more limited time at the academy as well, as far as that goes. So my job's very difficult as far as trying to facilitate the programs that we do, as finding enough practice time and game time for those types of programs.
Jen, while we're on the gymnasiums, is there a need? I mean, would you like to see this grow?
Yes.
Or are we turning people away? Or
so right now, if in my youth volleyball program, we have access to the gym for a 3-week period. So I'm supposed to provide eight games for these teams. They get 1 practice a week. We make them play 2 games a night, and it happens in seriously like they might get 2 weeks of practice and 3 weeks of play, and then we're done. Because we're working against border league volleyball, and then we have to start our basketball season. So it really, what we're providing when I say youth volleyball, it's very minimal. It's 8 games and probably 5 practices. And that is nowhere near enough to teach a kid a skill set. That if you were to just rely on my program to teach a kid a skills, they're not going to go make the high school team after being in my program. They need more than that.
Would you have a need or for gymnasium space for basketball and volleyball this time of year, in the middle of summer?
Middle of summer, yes. Right, you're right, during the middle of summer, we have no ability to use a gym at all. So a couple years ago, I approached the Sports Academy because they have a gym in the middle of the summer. And I asked them to do an adult co-ed volleyball, and I kind of helped them facilitate that. That went on for about 3 seasons. And now because their youth program's so big in the summer, they've chosen to dismiss that program because their focus is on youth. So what we had been doing for the summer, that was the only way to get a gym, and now there's no way for me to run a program at all in the summer. So yes, we could use some summer programming. Things could be happening all the time. Actually, during the summer months, AAU basketball, that's the prime time. That's when college coaches can actually legally watch a kid for recruiting process. Is during the summer months. So yeah. So, and saying that with our youth basketball program right now, each team gets 1 practice a week in half a court. So we really provide very minimal amount of time.
Youth basketball is when to when? I mean, when
that's a good question.
Now.
I have to run 2 sessions of it because of the gym facility not being available. So I have to start in October, and I run the 3 older grades, and that ends the very end of December. So I have 6 weeks for that group to run an 8-game course and practices. And then January, February is when I run my 3rd and 4th graders. And that's because I would like to run it all at once. Obviously, it's all like a winter sport, but we break it into 2 in order to get into enough gym space to facilitate practice times. And so during that time, each team gets 1 hour practice a week on half of a court during their season. So it's really not even a real practice because you're there with a whole nother team. So there's a lot of difficulties like that for gyms.
Yeah, quick question on that. Do you have a good feel for, are you trying to then provide all of our programming in the new gymnasium?
In the new gymnasium. So actually,
or are you still going to be utilizing?
We will still utilize the schools. The schools will still have, if any space we can get in there, if we could give the practice teams 2 practices a week, that would be wonderful. So that's doubling what we give right now. On a given week, I run 6 gyms on a Saturday. So we'll get 3 gyms out of this. I'll still be in 3 other gyms at another school or location. And hopefully I still continue to have access to some of those, because in the last couple of years, when I first started, we were able to get some high school space. The last 2 years, no high school space whatsoever. And the Sports Academy has limited my time on Saturdays as well. And so because they're providing their own programming. So we will still utilize some of the middle school and other schools for practices and games.
So have you worked and looked at the programming? We just went through a list of things we could do in the gymnasium, but are we going to have you worked through, are we going to be able to offer any more of those
programming
new programs
so
or not?
Great question. Let's go to the next slide. You're right on the next idea. So if you look at this chart, at the very top in the blue, it says gymnasium leagues currently offered. Right now I offer volleyball, basketball, and adult women's volleyball in a gym. Those are the 3 things. So we want to continue those 3 things. And yes, if we have more gym space, we could offer more because we can use all the space that we're offering now, but we really do want to do more. This is actually the revenue and expense kind of chart, but it also shows you what we do.
Of what you're currently doing.
Yes, so of what we're currently doing, the first 3. So the top 3 are what we're currently doing. The participation fees, you can see they're like $40 a person. At 150 participants, our revenue is $6,000 for volleyball. The expenses that it costs to run it, balls, equipment, and then the staff costs for referees, officials. And then you can kind of see what we profit off of. That was kind of just an example of that first line for youth volleyball. So we do youth volleyball, youth basketball, and adult women's volleyball. The next 2 sections are ideas and things that you saw in that PowerPoint that could be offered and have highly requests for. The adult type basketball leagues, we haven't been able to facilitate that for the last few years. The high school basketball age group, that, believe it or not, a lot of other communities actually offer recreation programs for their high school age kids. We only go up to 8th grade right now. And so now what happens after 8th grade? If you can't make a high school basketball team, you have no place to play basketball anymore. So the gymnasium would offer even an open gym space for them to come on their own, but we would like to offer that teams could come sign up as a team and play. Spanish Fork has 40 high school age basketball teams sign up every winter. So 40 teams besides their high school kids are getting to play some basketball at a recreational level. So we want to do that with basketball and with volleyball, if we could do that, especially co-ed volleyball, because in Utah, boys volleyball is not existent. We have a lot of boys who are interested in playing volleyball, so this would be a way they could do that at some level. Some of the other things that we would add would be like a dodgeball league, pickleball leagues, the adult co-ed volleyball back in, and then some youth and adult indoor soccer. So this is kind of showing the chart of, those are just some other leagues that are proposed. If we can program that, we want to program it as much as we can, obviously. And then it kind of shows the expense and revenue as well for those. Then the other idea is not just a league. A league is something that you run for like a 6-week course or, so many games. The other idea that would be super helpful for the economic impact in our community are the tournaments that come to town. And you've seen that this summer with baseball, softball. We've finally really filled every weekend of our facilities with that, and it's been great for our businesses, especially this year with the COVID entity. That's what's keeping our some of our hotels, motels, restaurants alive. So bringing tournaments in, we've always said in Cedar City we want to bring some winter type during that off season for events to come in. This will give us the opportunity. For example, you could do a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. The ones that are big are these AAU basketball, and some of those teams, I was very conservative when I wrote like how much per team, $300. Sometimes you go to a tournament and teams are paying $900 to enter the tournament, and they're getting 60 teams, and those are those summer ones where if you can get the hook of the college coaches coming to watch, you can really bring a lot of people to town. And the way this gym is designed, out of all of the 3 gymnasiums I've seen or been a part of, this one actually has enough space in between each court to house some spectator seats so that we're not locked into just having just a game. Now you can have a game with some spectators and things like that, so that it makes it more of a competitive competition event facility. So, and then these are kind of duplicate type sports, but it's just a different idea of coming from a league now to a tournament. You can do these tournaments 1 time a year, twice a year. You could have a soccer tournament in there 3 times a year. You could have a pickleball tournament in there 3 times a year. It doesn't really matter. This is kind of an example of the revenue that was estimated if you were to do it 1 time a year, each of those events, and add those leagues, and you can kind of see the bottom line of the team participation fees is the $78,000, then the expense of equipment, whatnot, and the staff expense is the $23,000, and then you make some money at the end of the day. These are pretty conservative as far as team fees and whatnot, but I wanted to make sure that we didn't over-excite you about that end of it. But and like I say, the first year we may add 2 or 3 of these things. The second year it will depend on adding more staff, adding more programming, and also kind of getting those relationships with these entities that partner with you, that you bring into your gym. So, do you have any questions for me? I think I'm going to turn the time over to Chris next. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Chris Hudson, Aquatic Center Manager. Kid, if you go ahead and move to the next slide. So also to add to Jen's comments there, one of the big things that this provides us is seasons. You mentioned Jen mentioned the basketball season, the volleyball season, but a lot of these new offerings can fit in between those seasons. And those are typically times where we're either not doing anything or there's not being something offered. So it allows us a lot of versatility, and I'll actually talk a little bit about that versatility in just 1 minute. One of the things we've talked about is rental rates for the gym. Quinceañeras, if anyone's ever been to one of those, I've been to several, and I have a lot of friends that are from Mexico, and so I've gone to them, and they're huge, and they'll rent a full court out for 12 hours and have a big giant party. So these are some comparable rates that we have seen around the state. Washington is most comparable to these rates. So these are just some general figures of what we could get from just a standard rental if someone wanted to come in and rent the courts for whatever the reason was. One full court, half court. We could obviously do a 3-court package if we really wanted to, but these can fill in those times where currently we don't have that opportunity to fill that in and to fill that time with items. One of the biggest problems we have in recreation is it's feast or famine. Everybody wants a basketball court at the same time every day for the same time window, but then you have all this time that it's not being used. But these gyms provide us with an opportunity to maybe do programming for seniors in the middle of the day. Next slide, Kit. So as part of this, the whole gymnasium project we've heard is about $6.2 million. We're slowly chipping away at that RAP tax. We're trying to chip away at little bits of it, but that does include the gymnasium and the child watch area. And we want to make sure we clarify that. It's not necessarily a daycare. It's not somewhere where families are coming and dropping their kid off and driving away. This is specifically for patrons who are coming to the aquatic center. While they're there, they can have their child watched. They can't go to Walmart and go get their groceries and whatnot, because then that limits who can use it. But it does allow for that mom that just needs to get out and needs someone to watch little Timmy while she attends a yoga class or whatever, or walks the track or lifts weights and trains for a triathlon for 2 hours a day or whatever it is, that she can do that. And there's lots of rules that we can set in place. There's all over the state. But the general consensus is in my own personal experience at other locations, as well as talking to people around the state, is that the child watch really kind of makes their programming during those times of the day where we're not doing anything. It allows you to start programming those times of the day. Washington said their time from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. is huge now because of their daycare, and they attribute it 100% to that. At least the last time I talked to them, that was what they attributed it to. We have a lot of existing infrastructure in the gymnasium. This was all put in prior to any of us talking about adding a phase 2 in this scenario. This was all talked about originally. So there have been some questions as to whether or not these things were promised. These things were definitely intended because they were designed, they were built, they were funded to be put into the building. For example, the shared walls of the current existing aquatics area to the phase 2 of the gyms, they're designed to support the additional structure and additional weight of the gyms. Footings were actually poured. There are actually physical footings and forms in the ground ready to go for that new gymnasium. The site was prepped and leveled, and if anyone knows up there, that's actually a really costly thing to do up in that space because we're on solid bedrock up there. It actually cost a lot of money to prep and level and to do things like that. So it actually was a sizable amount to add these things in at the time. Electrical was actually designed for the added draw of the amenities in the new gymnasium, such as HVAC, lighting, treadmills, that kind of thing. The locker rooms were designed in such a way as to accommodate both those spaces. If the gym had not been intended, the locker rooms they don't function very well for the pool the way they are, but they do if there's a pool and gym combination. So that's the way they were designed, knowing that there would be a phase 2 and a gym being built onto this. The second level to the aquatic center was even added. If we didn't have gymnasiums, there wouldn't have been a second level because it wouldn't have made sense financially to add 2 stories, because then you have to add an elevator and you have to add stairs, which are a sizable amount, upwards of you put those 2 in, you're just about $1 million right there, probably $600,000 ish to $1 million, depending on what you do. Next slide. And then also for the Child Watch, which is actually, for those that have been in the lobby, it's just in that north end of the lobby. As you look out the window at the lake, that's actually designed for to be the Child Watch on that end. The walls, there's drainage put in place. There's actually a drain pipe sitting there ready for the bathrooms for the Child Watch. It was prepped and leveled again, no small feat. The north wall is designed for the entrance to that area as well. It's got the openings. And then there's conduit from our electrical panels running to there, and they just terminate and they're ready for electrical wires to go through that. The Child Watch, of course, it's to provide parents that time to come in and to utilize that time when their kids are off at school and they can come in and participate. Not everyone's a swimmer. You know, we have a lot of people that want to exercise. And of course, the gymnasiums are not designed to be any sort of, one size fits all. I mean, we're not going to have the types of things that you'd see at a Retro or a Vasa, that kind of thing. We're here for the basic, kind of entry level. And if you want to take it further, you go to those professional gyms. What we're here to do is to provide that space for mom. We're hoping to get a stroller lane on the track, so moms can bring their stroller and walk the track with a stroller. That's kind of the design and what I've been pushing for anyway. So that daycare, we thought, we'd start off with kind of an 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. because that's about the time when most parents would need a daycare, a Child Watch. But then that way they can come during that middle time of the day. There's proposed costs of about $3 per hour, $2 for each additional child. Monthly passes available as well. Parents do need to stay on the premises, and we've already looked at a pager system that would be pretty easy and efficient. They have to keep the pager on them. That way, if we have a 6-month or a 1-year-old that has a diaper, we're not changing diapers. They can come change the diaper, and we can just give them a call. But also so that we can say, hey, your 2 hours is up. That's you need to come get your child and move on. It's not a daycare. Actually, Kid, if you could go back to that last slide for me real quick. So staffing, that's kind of the rough figure for staffing that we figured. That's 2 staff times 5 hours a day times 5 days a week. The nice thing about this is it's flexible. If we do have to add more staff, our front desk staff can step in this Child Watch environment where we don't have to meet the same licensing requirements as like an educational institution. Where it is a Child Watch, the parent has to stay on the premises. We have a lot more flexibility in how we administer that labor cost. So this is the approximate what we think just the labor would be for that 5 days a week. All right, thanks, Kit. And then I'll turn the time over to Jason with some just facts and figures.
Jason Norris, Finance. Sorry all the good, interesting speakers are done. Now the anchor's dragging in here, so we get the number crunching part.
Take us home, Jason.
I will. Before I begin, so our rec department here has been running a lot of tournaments. How much do we charge for field use for softball and baseball that we've been having? $100 a day per field. So this group has done a great deal to bring business into our community, especially for businesses that are having a rough go right now. And Cedar City municipally here at $100 a field, we're not really making any money or profiting very much. Probably, well, we're not. So, and that's okay. I just want to point that out as we talk about any financial issue with recreation with the city. What we're trying to do is facilitate activities in our community and make it a nice place. And certainly in a time like this, we've made it a very attractive location for folks to come from other areas and come and recreate and spend money here and support our local economy. And our job as city is the facilitator. So as we kind of go through this financial analysis, don't be shocked that currently the Aquatic Center doesn't net any profit, and the Rec Center as a whole complex also will not net any profit, and none of our recreation amenities net any profit, not our lake, not our ball fields, not our trails, and they may at times be free for use. However, they are not free operationally. We have labor and maintenance and equipment and a number of things that go into making those available for our citizens who ultimately foot the bill for all of this. So I'm willing to kind of meander through my segment and take any discussion, just depending on questions folks may or may not have. What I've done is I broke down, with the help of Liz, just kind of our admissions picture currently for the Aquatic Center for our fiscal 19 year. So at the top there, the first category is our daily admission. That's just single use, come in and swim for an hour or two. And then we have, as you go down, we have the types of passes that we sell and the amount of revenue we generate per pass category. And then below the table, I have family rates. We have a number of rates for users. And rather than do 50 pages of this, I just used the family rates, which are the highest rates, to do the division into the use. So $4.50, or the adult use rate, we had 42,467 swimmers in fiscal 19.
To clarify that, we don't have a family rate on the daily admission. Right, that's the adult rate. So family, if you're looking at
So yeah,
20,
so
30
there's
bucks.
a child. Well, okay. So single use rate is either $4 for a child or it's $4.50 for an individual.
Both.
I use the category family rate because we have 6 or 7 different fee structures depending on couples, individuals, families, senior, student, youth. So to simplify, I just simply went with the family rate category because it's highest. So $4.50 is an individual rate. It's a little confusing. I just didn't want to do 20 slides.
Yeah.
So if you use the individual adult rate, $4.50, and divide that into 191,103, we have 42,467 swims. So there you go. That's the minimum daily swimmer purchases we have annually. And then we sell about 756 monthly memberships, 376 3-month memberships, 43 6-month memberships, which you can see it doesn't seem to be very popular, and then about 155 annual memberships. So then that blue line at the very bottom, I just said, what is the percentage of revenue there by category? And 56% of the swim use is just individual daily admissions. And right now, we sell 18% of that revenue is for annual membership. So that's just information. As is with the swimming pool, that's kind of the interest. Most of it is in just day passes. We don't have a whole lot of interest in memberships. Any questions?
Do we have any information on ancillary income, such as concessions, rental of rooms, that kind of thing?
We do, yeah.
I mean, this is strictly just the admissions to the
Just
swimming pool.
admissions. Where we're going with this is there's been a lot of discussion on if we turn this into a rec center with the gymnasium, how many passes are we going to sell? We don't know. What we do know is, as a swimming pool, this is the number of passes that we sell and the number of daily admissions we have. So staff didn't want to come in with any unusual projections. We haven't had any polling or questionnaires or really public discussion about if we
turn this into a rec center? Would you be likely to buy a family pass or not? We've not done any of that, so.
Would the expected, I don't know how other communities do this, are we expecting that, where we have passes, would these likely be combination passes from this point where there would be access to the gym facilities and the aquatic center?
So, right now, and I don't speak for everyone, the way we've presented this is, right now, we're suggesting we would just leave these family rates as is, but you would get full use of the entire facility. Now, if you as council say, we want to see you generate more revenue, then we would need to increase those rates. But as in terms of my personal comfort level, I'm fine with leaving these rates as they are. I know there's been discussion about making this accessible to all income levels of the community. $399 a year for a family of 6 to 6 people is pretty affordable. That's
$33.25 a month.
$33.25 a month for unlimited use. So that's drastically less than like one movie. Back when I was a young man and we had this thing called movies you could go to, be a lot cheaper than that.
Well, I know Jen gave us some projection numbers on tournaments and things of that nature, and she indicated they were fairly conservative numbers. But if and I think she said it was like one tournament in those numbers. But, I mean, do we think we can do 6 tournaments a year, 12 tournaments a year, 8 tournaments a year? I mean, we got to look at some number to give an indication of what we think we might be able to do, to give us some idea of what some income revenue might look like.
Yeah, and there's, I should also point out, there's 2 ways to handle tournaments as well. Like what you see we're doing with these ball tournaments, we allow organizations to come in and rent the field. But those organizations, they provide all the officiating, they all the fees are paid to those organizations, and they make a profit operating that tournament.
Right.
Now our businesses get, hundreds or even a few thousand people running through town throughout the course of the month as a result, but the city's not really making a lot of money. So we would have to decide on these indoor tournaments. Would our rec group be completely running and then keeping the profit from those, or would we simply allow one of these organizations to just rent the facility? So it could be, depending on how you want to do it. We could run the entire thing, or we could allow these organizations just to rent the facility and they can make the profits, and our businesses and hospitality would just have the folks in town. In terms of how many you think would come, do you know?
You'd have to probably just calendar out and see how many you could do within a summer. I would also think that
Come up, Jen.
So, Utah Summer Games pulls off some of the biggest tournaments of the year, and they do that one time a summer. Really, you could do that 2 or 3 times a summer, and then sometimes in the winter. It really depends on the ambition of who's your staff member that's going to program this. What are we willing to pay somebody to make this part of their job? Now, some of it will lie under the category of Brad Abrams, I believe, with him bringing events in. He can go recruit or run any type of tournament there as well, as far as that coming in. So it really is just unlimited as to what you can do. We just have to sit down and calendar that. Right now, Cedar City does 1 basketball tournament, AAU, a year. And I think we could do 2 or 3. There's no AAU volleyball tournaments in Cedar City right now. We could do 2 or 3. And depending on how great our facility is and how well we accommodate and give customer service, all of a sudden you've seen this summer, Cedar City's a hot spot for baseball, softball. And now we're on the map. So we're going to continue, we're turning people away now that can't get to the fields because we have them all reserved. So it really is, like I said, it was pretty low estimate, like saying if you did one tournament a year of each of those, that kind of showed the revenue. And I think but that's kind of the idea, though, of recreation, like Jason said, is it's not all about us trying to make the money off the exact tournament, but it's making the money, bringing the people in for the economic.
No, but we should maximize the
Yes.
use of our space.
Yes,
If
yes.
we're going to expend $6.2 million, we
Yes.
should maximize that space.
I totally agree. And I think once we get these 3 gyms, you'll find that there's still not enough space for what we want to do.
And some of the,
But I think you said it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key. We need to program out. You have
Yes.
identified great programming,
Yes.
tournament opportunities, and everything
Mhm.
else. I would like us to calendar it
Yes.
and just take a good hard look at just how much
Mhm.
volume and activity we can run through those gyms
Mhm.
and create a business plan that addresses that. Now,
Yes.
I guess I'm a business plan snob, but I would
Yeah.
love to extend what you have given us this evening
Mm-hmm.
to that kind of an analysis.
Yes, and I think in addition to what you're saying, the types of things that I presented today was gymnasium, and by having the child watch, all of a sudden now your multipurpose rooms are more programmable as well, and just doing that type of thing too. So it really does increase the ability for the whole community center to be more programmable.
Absolutely.
So,
So let me, because I am pushing for that kind of a
Mhm.
business plan, let me also volunteer
Okay.
to help with that business plan,
okay.
okay? And I've got templates and other
Yes.
things that we can use.
And I think that'd be great. And like I said too, what I presented today was strictly sport type oriented. There were the other holiday type events, or the other
there's
types
the
of
dance competitions
and the birthday
I
parties
and a lot of that type of stuff
Mhm.
that uses gym space.
yeah.
that-
So maybe we could find a
The full
gym.
breadth of all of that needs to
Mhm.
be distilled down now into what I
Mhm.
think is a typical year.
Yes.
So
And I think we could find maybe a couple comparable rec centers and see what they're doing exactly and what to expect. I would think that it would take a few years for us to max out to the top of what we really can do.
Sure.
It's going to take a little bit of deciding how much staff, because I know it's hard to invest in another full-time person or 2 full-time people or whatnot, but if they're facilitating the programming that it takes to bring all of this in, it really does pay for that staff salary. So, okay, I'll let Kenny back out of
Ken?
Ken Nelson, Leisure Services. I just want to give those that aren't familiar how these tournament aspects, why we're full every weekend. So these tournaments from different organizations, I'll give the example of the baseball world, but it's, as Jen mentioned, it's the same for the gym world. So there's 113 teams coming this weekend. They're paying $595 a team. So there's a reason those entities call tournaments. Because, as Jason mentioned, we're not getting that. The $100 a field is not what we're about. We're about bringing these tournaments in for the community and for the businesses. But there are those that do the tournaments are there because they're getting $595 times 113. So those are the aspects of the tournament world that some people don't understand is there wouldn't be people that wants tournaments every weekend if they weren't in it for the finance. So I just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
I'd be happy to review the prices we're charging.
Sure, yeah. Well, just the point is, yeah, there's just 2 models. One is you just provide the facilities, which is what we've been doing, or 2, you get in and run the tournaments. And that's an elected body decision on what you want to see staff do. So remind me, we're going to jump back to this slide, but now we're going to go to the one that will make us all cringe. Kid, if you'll jump forward. So we're going to talk about the Aquatic Center currently and how it loses money or requires a subsidy. This spreadsheet even confused me, but I tried to make it so that there would be a little bit of comparable logic because what we really just want to demonstrate is there's a different cost to running the aquatic or wet area of a recreation facility versus the gymnasium or the dry area. So I've summarized a lot of the expenditures and revenues so that, Again, this isn't 12 pages, but I just want to, hopefully for the public, demonstrate the differences in what the wet side and the dry side require. So the revenue category up there at the top, I've used the word earned revenue because we have to use general fund revenue to ultimately make the facility whole. So earned revenue are admissions, which we looked at on the prior slide, and then we have fees when we rent out some of the rooms, or we have sales of concessions or rents, etc. So I just summarized those. I just divided those by 12 because I don't think it really matters the monthly activity. And in Iron County Schools, transfers $130,000 to the city for use of the facility. So that also is just divided by 12. But specifically in the admissions category, just a point of interest, you'll see that it looks like February and September and December are our least popular swimming months in fiscal 2019. Our warm weather months of May, June, and July are certainly more popular than the other months. So climate seems to be a big factor in people's desire to use the swimming component of the facility. So we'll jump down to the expenditure category. So hourly wage is really the front desk and the lifeguards. Now our front desk also does a lot of work for all the recreation programs. That's where they're centralized, but it's primarily the lifeguards. It's got our hourly janitorial, etc. So I wanted to show the hourly wage by month to show that it's very expensive for safety reasons to have lifeguards at a swimming pool. And it isn't that the facility's inefficient in that category. It's just if you want swimmers to be safe, which we do, whether there's 2 swimmers or 100 swimmers, we have to have a minimum of, I think, at least 9 lifeguards out there to make it a safe environment. So there's not a lot that we can do staffing-wise to change that. So if you're going to have the pool open, you have to have.
Is that the same
lifeguards.
9 lifeguards, whether you have 100 people in the pool or 350 people in the pool?
Yeah. Chris, you want to come up and talk on that a little bit?
That's a very good question. It actually depends a little bit on the use of the pool at the time, but when you're in open swim, that's the bare minimums that we have to meet state requirements.
Okay.
Now, because of the bare minimums versus our design, that actually covers a very wide range. We don't have to add lifeguards. In fact, I've only ever had to do that one time where I had to add an extra lifeguard because of basically the state requirements and the size of our pool just make it so we have to have pretty much the maximum amount of guards that we would have to have regardless. So it's actually kind of a little bit of a design flaw. We have to have that many guards, but we have to have them based on the laws.
Thank you.
And then you'll see in those summer months when the outdoor pool's open, then that wage is even higher because we have more water that we have to lifeguard. The second part is the gas and electric. So that's broken down by month. It's kind of a similar scenario. If we don't really have the ability to let the climate go during times of the day or over, on Sunday or whatever when it's not open, we have to keep that temperature adequate for swimmers. So that's expensive. $227,000 in fiscal 19 for power and gas. The wet side of the facility needs a lot of that gas usage to heat up the water. You're not going to see that in the dry side. And then I just summarized all the rest of the operating expenditures, and that's the other 466,000. That's not as relevant as the hourly wage for lifeguards and then the utility cost for water. And then at the very bottom, you see that the city transfers a total of $424,412 to cover all the expenses and make the fund whole. You go to the next slide, Kit.
Real quick, I was kind of confused on this. Why does our gas bill go up in the summer? Are we heating more pools than normal?
Have to heat the outdoor pool.
Is that so we only heat the outdoor pool in the summer?
When it's open, when it's running.
Right, Chris?
What's that?
Summertime, we have to heat the outdoor pool.
Correct. We do have to heat the pools because, Chris Hudson, we do have to heat the outdoor pool because the water coming in is still at a lower temperature. It does lose heat, even though it's nice and hot outside. Overnight, it loses a lot of heat. And same thing with all of the pools, and where you actually have doors open, the air temperature is not as consistent, and with that fluctuation comes more heat just to heat the incoming water and keep it up to temperature. So there is some gas usage there.
Okay.
Yep.
You might as well just stay closer.
That's right.
Okay, so here is our projection for the dry part of the facility, or the gymnasium area. We as staff, finance and recreation, we're not super great at utility costs, so we reached out to some folks that are pretty good at that and asked them if they could help us get a square footage cost annually for the size of space that we have. So we came up with $108 multiplied by the square footage, and that tells us our gas and electric, which is primarily electric for the gymnasium, is going to get us probably $118,000-ish dollars. Please don't hold us completely to that, but we're pretty confident that's the minimum it's going to be.
So we got those costs from the school district. We got those costs from the sports academy on what it costs them to do gas and electric in their gyms. And we kind of took both. They weren't the same exact costs. We used those to formulate the average that you have here.
So it's expensive. Hourly wage, so unlike the pool, it requires at least 9 lifeguards. The gymnasium portion doesn't really require a lot of staffing. We've already got front desk staffing, and we're estimating that it'd be primarily in the evening, that we just need an additional hourly person to kind of monitor what's going on in the gymnasium. Then we're going to have some custodial hourly wage to clean up in there. And then the sundry, there's going to be some cleaning supplies and things of that nature. So in total, we're estimating that the gymnasium's going to cost about $150,000 annually to operate. So if you'll jump back 2 slides. So in order to get $150,000 covered, you'll see in annual memberships we'd have to sell about another 300 or 400 of those to cover that. So that's what it would take. So right now we've got about 155 families that have an annual membership. We'd need to more than triple that to cover that 150,000 if that's the way we would assume it could be done. Obviously, there's the tournament discussion, which we had earlier. there would be day use. But that, just to kind of tie that together, that would be membership-wise what we would need to cover that $150,000 annually to operate the gymnasium.
Well, I, for one, would like to see some projections on the income side as well, through a combination of, as you just mentioned, some increased admissions and/or tournaments to say, do we think we can raise $80,000 a year so that deficit really is only $70,000? Maybe we can, but I'd like to see it. We have a detailed projected of expenses, but we have nothing for the income side.
That's all I have on numbers, unless there's any other discussion, or even from the public, if there was financial concerns with that. That's, again, we have a wet side, a dry side. They're not really very similar in the way that they operate. Hopefully I've demonstrated that. And yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Could you go forward a couple slides? I think there's a couple more slides. So part of what we did when we hired Mr. Wilson is we hired him to do some renderings of what this space is supposed to look like. So there's 4 slides here that are going to show you what the proposed area is going to look like. This is a slide that looks from the lake back to the gyms or the rec center. Go ahead, Kit. This is a projected use of the interior of the building, how it's going to look. Now, these are renderings. They're not meant to be to the nth degree in the most minute of detail. Kenny was pointing out earlier that the basketball hoops, when they're up, they're not going to look like these hoops in the back that are up. They're going to fold up into the ceiling. Those are just some of the small details that will be worked out. Can you go ahead, Kip? This is the upstairs of the facility, what it's intended to look like, the walking track. You'll have a separation between the walking track and the big hole in the roof where it goes down to the gym floors, and you also have a separation between the walking track and the exercise areas. Please go ahead, Kit. This looks from the back exercise areas through the recreational facility. This tees off on what Jen mentioned earlier. If you look on the left-hand side of the picture, you see the seating there. The space is designed to have 2 curtains drop down from the ceiling in between those 3 different basketball courts, and on each side of the curtain you could get some seating similar to what you see in the picture there, so grandma and grandpa, mom and dad can come and watch their kids play. Go ahead, Kit. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the last one.
All right. Do you have a question, comment?
Stephen Gwen, Cedar City. I actually came here tonight to watch this, and I know there's a lot of questions and concerns and wonderings of various strategies that people are thinking about and addressing this whole time. But the reason I came here tonight was because I had read this presentation or looked at it and was concerned about, where did we get the information about future uses, future revenues that would bring in, and most of those questions were answered by our leisure services and our rec people. And I wanted to say one thing and then ask a quick question. And that is, thank you for, clearly these people have gone and they've benchmarked, they've looked at Washington City and other places in the state, and they've compared and projected and done good research and vetted good information as best they could in order to get us as good a numbers as they could. My only question is, and I asked this, and I apologize for my ignorance to have to ask it at this meeting and this time, is that since a lot of the use of this facility is going to be about tournaments and other things that are coming in and clearly generating tax revenue from hotels and restaurants and other things, and I very much appreciate Councilman Phillips and Councilman Isom's very strategic and thoughtful questions about how this will all work. Is there some way that we could formally what's the right word I'm looking for? Tag or formally allocate some of the tax revenue that those visitors bring in to support these facilities, so that it's, these facilities always know, hey, we're always going to get some of that tax revenue that we're helping to generate. Maybe it already happens that way. I don't know. I'm asking.
So the biggest tax revenue that comes in is sales tax revenue. When we get the allotment of sales tax revenue, it comes to us in a lump sum from the state of Utah. There are some entities that claim to be able to break down which sector of the economy that comes from, and they have very they're kind of broad definitions when they list their sectors of the economy. So it'll be retail, or it'll be home improvement, construction. And it's very difficult to line those specific tax dollars back to a ball tournament or back to a dance competition.
Right.
We've tried to do that in the past, particularly with baseball tournaments, and tried to find a better way to show the impact they have on the economy.
A better way to track it.
By tracking the sales tax. I just don't know of a good way to do that.
Well,
There is one way that we do this with TRT.
Well, the TRT tax is a good measure of how many folks are staying in our hotels, because it's a tax specifically on short-term lodging, hotels, Airbnb, stuff like that. So that one does show a link back to a specific thing that was purchased. But within that, we still have a hard time of saying, was that TRT revenue bump for July due to baseball, or was there a lot of family reunions, or did the parks open up? So those are difficult ties to make. You always see economic multipliers used. In Danny's world, they use those a lot to estimate revenues and estimate economic impacts. But those are not exact. Those there's a lot of assumptions involved there too.
The only reason I ask, and I totally get it, that's very hard to track, is that it seems like, well, I just felt like as these guys were talking about their efforts to do this and their efforts to do that, it almost felt like there was a little, like, we don't always see all the reward of the work we do. They don't always get to, and so I thought maybe if we could find a way, that would be one way for them to see directly a result from all their efforts. Oh, here our work went up, our success went up, our revenue, went up. So thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other comments, concerns, questions? Okay.
No, just that we'll continue to work on this and put a full business plan together so we can really analyze it. I think this is a good step forward, and
Including what was just brought up.
Yeah.
That impact.
Yep.
Okay. Then we will move on to item number 18, a public hearing to receive comments related to Cedar City's application to the Permanent Community Impact Fund Board for Recreation Center funding.
And I thought we approved this way back.
Yeah, well.
So we did, but we didn't have the public hearing. And I apologize. I submitted the application, and the 5-county guys said, hey, man, you have to have a public hearing. And I said, we do? And they showed me where we do. There's no requirement that we have it in a certain chronological order. Having it today was as good of a day as any. I'm sorry we didn't have it when we were doing the budget discussions, and we had a lot of public participation, but I didn't realize we needed one at that point.
So with that, we will open the public hearing. And we will close the public hearing.
How
And
does
we-
that affect the timing then of an application?
Well, the application's still in. I need to make some adjustments to it. One of the things is attach a copy of the minutes from the public hearing.
Okay.
And then at the earliest, we're probably looking the October round.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Item number 19, consider placing limitations on the posting of political signs. Mr. Isom.
Oh, dear. we've all been here a very long time and have received a lot of very good information. And I don't want to belabor this point, but I will tell you, driving around town, it's a wonderful thing now that the primary election is over. And I don't in any way want to curtail First Amendment rights, the opportunity to run for office and get your name out there. But I just think having a sign out for 8 months is excessive
Agree.
and unnecessary. And as a candidate, there was no guideline as to who was first and who was last and how early that was before the election. But it just seems like we can do something to put some parameters around it that wouldn't infringe on people's First Amendment right, but would help our city be more clutter-free.
I agree. And
Sooner than later.
yeah, all kinds of dates and numbers have kind of been thrown around by different people, and so I don't know if it's best for us to sit down and funnel some stuff through Tyler so we can come up with something, but I know that I think there has to be some kind of a limits put on it, and I don't want to speak for my other council members, but regardless of whether you're a new candidate or incumbent, there is a time and a place, and I think there has to be a limit before a primary and before a convention, if there's going to be a convention where people are contested. I understand that. And then there has to be a time period afterwards where they need to be taken down.
And that has to be a very short time period.
Yes, agreed.
But the time period before, I don't know that there's a magic number. 90 days seems plenty to me.
Yep.
I don't know that you would accomplish more in 120 days than you would in 90 days before an election. But I just for the sake of community clutter with signage, I'd like to
I agree.
at least visit that.
So if we go, if you look at it and you go 90 days before and you give them 30 days after to take them down?
No, you don't give them 30 days afterwards.
How
You
long
give
do
them
you
7
take?
days.
7 days? And you have a
7.
convention year.
7.
Pardon?
If you have a convention, a primary, and a general election in a year, that's 3, 6, 9 months that we're
Well,
still.
the convention and the
allowing
primary could be
signs.
covered under the same time period, couldn't it?
Conventions are typically what, April, March, somewhere
I
in
think
there?
in
Yeah.
April is when they typically
Primaries are July,
No, primaries are June.
June, I'm sorry. June. So would we just have them up before the convention and leave them all the way up through June? Anyway, those are just some.
I think 90 days works for me.
Another thing, I made some comments last week about I prefer public shaming to an ordinance, but so that aside, one of the concerns brought up to me was private property rights. So where the city already has a prohibition, except for that one little section on 600 South and Sage, on signs on city property. Are we going to say no signs in residences, that residents don't have the ability to show their support for their candidate? Do we want to prohibit it on business property? Do we want to prohibit on any public property, that's whether it's state or federal? Where we already have the city prohibition, what is the scope of this?
I don't think you can. I don't think the state allows you to put signs on their
I don't
property.
think so
anyway.
either,
They'll
right.
just come and throw them away. Even in the right of way, so will the feds. So
Oh,
Yeah.
a lot of them are on 56 in highway
Around
right away, but they
I-15
they don't have time to go around and take them all down. The fences along the interstate right now that have signs posted to them are in right of ways.
Yeah. Sitlo will.
Eventually.
No, I mean Sitlo will allow you because I've called them, got permission.
I know that if there had been,
Other
I
guys,
can
but-
assure you that if there had been some kind of a guideline and I knew that I had supporters I would say to my supporters, would you please remove your signs and don't have them come up again until 30 days prior, or whatever it is.
And I've seen Facebook posts that have done that.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Now, that doesn't mean you can require them to do it, but if they're a supporter of yours, they're more likely to follow your directive.
Right. And so I guess that's my question. Is this a directive that candidates be required to communicate that timeline to supporters? Is this a prohibition on any placement on certain properties? That's where I don't know what the proposed extent would be or scope of this.
Well, I think there has to be some, for me, I feel like there'd be some written ordinance that says what the time limit is, and then candidates are encouraged to ask their supporters to remove signs in a timely manner no later than 7 days after the election, or whatever that verbiage might end up being.
Maybe if you guys could email Tyler some of your ideas, and he'll try to synthesize them, and we'll present something back to the council.
All right.
Public shaming. You got mine.
Public shaming.
Yeah.
And prohibition. I like that one. Prohibition.
Spectacular with that.
I move that we adjourn this meeting. It's been a
Second.
little slice of heaven.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.